exactly. Even the tech guy. So
I'm going to pass host back over and you'll be good to go.
thank you, Kevin. It's always a pleasure to work with you. All right. I'm waiting for me to get my host capabilities back, and then I will turn it over to Christine to begin her meeting.
Oh my gosh. Yay.
Hey.
Oh. Hey, Kevin.
All right.
Hello, hello.
Christine, you are now co-host with me, and the meeting is now yours. It is 8:03.
Thank you, sir.
Unless you want to wait a little longer, there are still some people to sign in.
I think we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. We're now live on YouTube. It's, as Hank said, it is now 8:03, so I'm going to officially call this meeting to order. Thank goodness it's Friday, right? Okay, so let's get started then. I am Christine Germar, the parent representative for Region 4 and chair of the state Sseac. I'm going to jump right in and call the roll of the membership. As I call your name, please respond with your full name and tell us which constituency group you represent. I'll begin with Danny.
Hi, I'm Danny Allen Bronaugh. I am representing the higher education constituency group, and I'm from James Madison University.
Great. Meredith.
Good morning. My name is Meredith Barber, and I'm the parent rep for Region 5.
Wonderful. Kendra.
Morning, my name is Kendra Belcher, and I represent Transition for Students with Disabilities.
Excellent. Suzanne.
Good morning, my name is Suzanne Bowers. I'm the Executive Director of PTSI, and we are Virginia's Parent Training and Information Center, and I am an ad hoc member.
Wonderful. Delana. Oh, today's Friday. I don't think she could join us today. How about Jeff? Is Dr. Castle here yet? I don't see him. Anne. Is Anne here this morning?
Yeah. Hi, good morning. My name is Anne Downing, and I represent Person with Disability.
Excellent. Mr. Garrison.
Mike Garrison, Region 6 parent.
Justin.
My name is Justin Gallen. I represent Person with Disabilities, Region 2.
Thank you. Claire.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Claire Huerta. I represent the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities.
Marguerite.
Hey, good morning. I'm Marguerite Jaffa. I'm the Region 1 representative and also the secretary.
Awesome. Erin. Did she make it into the room?
She's waiting. She had difficulties.
Okay. How about Matt?
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's Matt Luther, agency rep from the Division of Rehabilitative Services.
Excellent. And Tasha?
Tasha Mason, parent rep for Region 8.
Awesome. Pat?
Good morning, I'm Patricia Popp. I'm the state coordinator for the education of homeless children and youth in Virginia.
Okay. Rob?
Hello, I'm Rob Schwartz, person with disability.
Sir? Jill?
Jill Sowers, and I'm representing Virginia Department of Juvenile Justice.
Okay. Reagan?
Good morning, I'm Reagan Stiltner, and I'm the parent rep for Region 7.
Excellent. Brian? Oh, you're muted.
Good morning, I'm Brian Simo, and I represent private schools.
Wonderful. Joan? Did she enter? I don't see her name. How about Sandy? Did Sandy enter the room? No. Michael Willon. Sorry.
Morning, Michael Willen, parent rep, Region 2.
Wonderful. And I see that Dr. Castle has joined us. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Sorry, I was running a minute late there.
No.
Jeff Castle, I represent the Virginia Association of School Superintendents.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's great to see everyone again. For those of you who are watching this live stream, I thank you for joining us. Now I'm going to call for a motion to approve today's agenda. Please remember to state your name before you make or second the motion.
Morning, Michael Willen, move to approve the acceptance of today's agenda.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Danny Bruno, I'll second that.
Thank you, Danny. Any discussion? I will now call the roll of the voting members. Danny?
Sorry, I lost my mic. Yes, aye.
Thank you. Meredith?
Aye.
Kendra?
Aye.
Delana? Jeff?
Aye.
Mr. Garrison?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Marguerite?
Aye.
Aaron? Did she join yet? Matt?
Aye.
Tasha?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Reagan?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Joan? She's not on. Sandy? Looking. And Michael?
Aye.
Thank you. The chair votes aye and the motion carries for today's agenda to be approved. Okay, great. So I was at a meeting yesterday evening and I was asked by a colleague if our meetings were virtual and if they were, where they could be found. So of course I had to share where they could find us. And when I opened up the VDOE YouTube channel, I had to do a double take. I know you could Google this question and find out for yourselves, but guess how many views there were yesterday at 7 o'clock in the evening? 134. Like 134. Holy
awesome.
heck. So I think, I think it's totally appropriate for us to request a pay raise, don't you? Where's Hank?
I'm sure it'll be granted, Christine.
Nothing added to nothing equals nothing.
Oh, shucks. Well, you're welcome. There's your raise,
Thank you.
folks.
Actually, we were demoted because we lost our bacon.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hey, Christine, this is Suzanne.
Yes, ma'am.
When we go back in-person meetings, is it possible, Hank, don't kill me for asking this, is it possible to live stream our meetings just so that we have that as an option?
I mean, that's definitely a question for Hank, because it would require additional resources from VDOE in order to support us in those efforts. But, the fact that we're able to gain that kind of traction, we would never be able to accommodate 134 people additional in our current space. So, Hank?
Your suggestion will be taken under due advisement and consideration and will be providing you feedback before our next meet or at our next meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that the numbers are great. They're really great statistics. And in all seriousness, it is one of the areas within the updated reporting requirements that the Office of Special Education Programs has identified as a priority, and that's reporting to the public. And if we can help others within the Commonwealth better navigate the VDOE website, then we'll exceed that expectation, and we're way ahead of the game. So, the Office of Special Education Programs is putting a high level of importance around stakeholder involvement, and more specifically, parental members serving on local and statewide committees. So I'm going to try to drop a link in the chat box where you can find additional state advisory panel resources to help guide you on the state Sseac. So mark your calendars for January 28th, 2021. That's when OSEP will be doing an authentic stakeholder engagement webinar, and it's a training that is going to be designed for state advisory panel members and state interagency coordinating council members. So it's a joint webinar that they'll be hosting. It's only scheduled to be an hour. And so when I receive that link, I'll be sure to send you a personal invitation to attend. And I'll try to be reaching out to the other state advisory panels that I had been corresponding with in the spring to make them aware of it as well. So during our October meeting, we were hoping to receive a presentation on the evolution of virtual learning. There wasn't anything I could find specifically, but I did connect with the TIES Center. They are the National Technical Assistance Center on Inclusive Practices and Policies. And I believe they'll be bringing us a presentation in March that will focus on distance learning strategies and parent engagement. They're putting together a few short parent training videos. If you'd like to view them, let me know and I'll forward them to you. They're looking for feedback on the videos themselves. They're short, anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes, and they'd really like to have parents vetting these videos and giving them some real feedback. Just another reminder, once again, that about the call for applications to serve on the Early Childhood Education Advisory Committee. I don't know if any of you were able to take a look at that application to see the types of stakeholders that they were seeking out. Okay, how's everyone feeling today? Good, thumbs up, thumbs up. Do you think we can get ourselves to 10 a.m. without a break, or would that be pushing it? I heard lots of coffee consumption before we got started here. Okay, so if not, if we're good to go, then we won't stop until after Dr. Hollins provides her report. So I'm going to ask for assistance again. Jill, if you could help keep me on task. If I need help, I will call on you to help put me back on the agenda. Danny, I noticed that you are quite skilled at dropping links into the chat box. So if you could do that, that would be extremely helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, thank you. I think we did okay on the breaks yesterday, right? It didn't feel like we were taking too long, too far without any breaks. So we'll try to keep that up. Okay, let's give a wave or a big smile to Lisa Crafton, who is supporting us in the background, was playing Christmas music for us to enter the room. And then how about maybe, do we have smiley faces, emoticon smiley faces for Mr. Hank Millward? Yes, yes. And I believe Dr. Hollins is here in the room with us. And so I'm sure she would welcome you all, acknowledging her with maybe confetti and even some words of encouragement in that chat box for her. You know, I'm sure she would appreciate that. You know, I think her responsibilities are extraordinary right now. And just to let everybody know that they're all doing a wonderful job. There she is. I see her. I see Dr. Hollins. Dr. Hollins, is it too early to bring you in to share your report with us, or have you had enough coffee?
No, not at all, Christine. I'm ready to go. Much like Mike, I think I've overdosed already. So let's do this. Okay, wonderful. Then I'm going to yield the floor to you. Great. Thank you so much, Christine. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see you. I share Christine's enthusiasm for the participation of folks virtually. It was really exciting to see all of the views come in yesterday. And I do want to let you know that SCSS is definitely pushing social media presence. we find that it's been really helpful. And I will say that this has been nowhere more obvious than our work with our colleagues at PC, that getting to parents, family members, and advocates during the pandemic, social media has been such a key leverage point. And so our utilization of Facebook and Twitter in particular have just really helped us, I think, reach out to folks and hopefully, one, get them information and resources that they need, two, to help support them, but three, as you guys are aware of, just bringing them into the policies, the practices, kind of the work of the department and obviously of the Board of Education, of which you guys are such an integral component. And so I'm just so grateful for all of the hard work that you've been doing, not only as you usually do, but much less in the current environment that we find ourselves in. So it's great to be with you this Friday. I'm really excited to present a few updates that I think will be of use to you. I want to put a couple of things on your radar that are happening in the next couple of months, because I'm well aware that we won't be together again until 2021. I don't know about you, I'm not big into celebrating New Year's, but I think this year I might actually celebrate the start of a new year with everything that we have been challenged with. But, you know, one thing that I'm so proud of is the work of our students, the support of our families working with their children in remote and virtual learning environments. It truly has been amazing to see folks come together and do what's right for kids. And that's what we want to see. That's our goal every day. That's why we come to work. And so it's just such a pleasure to see some of the things happening across the Commonwealth. I see that Pat Pop is with us, and Pat led an amazing mini conference this week for a variety of stakeholders, but for so many of our foster care and homeless liaisons working in school divisions. And to be with that group of individuals this week, it was such a pleasure, given the work and effort that they have had to really kind of work overtime to support families who are vulnerable during this time. So, you know, I know we could spend all meeting talking about some great opportunities that have come from your regions, from our partners in higher education. I'm in the hard work of local school divisions. My social media feed is filled with school cafeteria workers delivering lunches dressed up like Christmas elves. I've seen teachers do the most creative things with kindergartners in a virtual environment. And I've seen some beautiful compositions by our high school students talking about what they're grateful for and how the pandemic has impacted them and their families. And so, you know, just really grateful at this point in time to be a public servant. And I know I speak for Hank and Lisa and myself that we're just so grateful for the opportunity to serve you all and work with you in the important charge that we have in making sure that our students are successful, not only in school, but far beyond. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I have a couple of slides today that I will provide you with as well, because I've updated some links on some topics that you all have expressed interest in. And so I want to make sure that I share that with you. And I'm going to pause just a moment so I can make sure that I have screen sharing capabilities. But while that is getting done, I want to let you know that, you know, obviously with things changing in the Commonwealth, and we've been dealing with this since March, the impact of local health data, particularly around COVID-19. And so we've seen a lot of change over the last few weeks, in particular, you know, what we're seeing with the change in environments in our local schools and communities. And so just want to give you a little bit of a refresher on how things are going, because I think, you know, if we would have had this meeting 3 or 4 weeks ago, I definitely would have told you that, hey, we are noticing a big difference in this transition from virtual and remote learning to more schools going in person. And that has really changed over the last couple of weeks due to some of the changes in data that we've seen. We've really seen a lot of our school divisions transitioning back to a more virtual or remote learning. So school divisions that were kind of making that jump into in-person learning, I think have definitely taken a look at their data and said, hey, you know, we really want to be really cautious about this. We've seen some trends that are concerning, and we've also seen, you know, the impact of holidays, right? People might be traveling more, they're out in the community more, and if you listened into any of the governor's updates, you've definitely heard that message echoed by him as well. And so I think we're definitely going to see a trend for school divisions in, you know, this kind of return to a more safe approach, particularly until the first of the year. And so just a reminder that we have the resources available on the VDOE homepage. I also want to let you know that there are some really great updates here around a topic that I know is very interesting. Now, I was so excited to hear from Christine that the TIES Center will be joining us. That is one of the technical assistance centers that is funded by our federal partners that has really been such a wealth of information and resources. They have everything from parent resource videos to instructional supports and resources for virtual teaching. And so I think it will be a really great opportunity. And I urge you to kind of come with questions from your region, or if folks are hungry for a resource, I think that would be a really great conversation to have with our colleagues in the center. We have also shared the links to the virtual teaching and learning hub out of VDOE, and this is kind of our own mini state version of a hub of resources that are dedicated to working with students in a virtual and remote learning environment. And everything here for professional development opportunities for teachers, to supports for parents working in the home learning environment, to, for us, how do we think about accommodating and modifying virtual instruction for students with disabilities that really come to the table with a variety of needs, with a variety of strengths, and really some challenges that look different in the virtual learning environment. So this link will take you directly to the hub, and they're kind of these big buckets for topics that you'll see there, but I really encourage you to share those with folks in your region. And it's really helpful too, I think, for a lot of folks working with teachers to remind them that, hey, here are some resources that we could make use of, and I think this might be a great opportunity for us to collaborate together. We are working really hard to push this information out directly to special education teachers, as well as our specialized instructional support staff, our school counselors, our school social workers, our school nurses, our school psychologists. And so just making sure that they have the resources available to them to really help them integrate their work into the virtual environment. You'll see I've also linked the SDSS resource page. These are all the resources that the Department of Special Education and Student Services has developed in order to meet the needs of our special populations. And so everything here for school counselors looking at doing a virtual counseling session, to helping special education teachers working with students with significant cognitive disabilities in a virtual environment. Some great assistive technology, some awesome augmentative communication resources, and just ways to think about approaching the day of instruction in order to support students the most effective way possible. We also have really beefed up our approach to prevention resources and work around social emotional learning and development. As you can imagine, it's the same for adults as it is for children. For many of us, not being in our usual environment, either at work or in school, has definitely kind of made a change for us. And I think we've all dealt with that differently and probably had that impact us differently. And so we want to be really cognizant of making sure that we are supporting students with much more than just academic supports, but really thinking about how can we make sure their social emotional, their behavioral, their developmental well-being is being attended to, and that we're still creating that those connections within their community. And I think that in a time like this is so important. And being at the mini conference earlier this week, I was reminded that we get so tied up in kind of the day-to-day, the academic, we're really focused on that instructional day, which obviously is our priority, but making sure that we're reaching out to parents and families, making sure that we're connecting them with resources that are easily accessible for them given the challenges of their day. Being able to access a 20-minute PT webinar after their kids have gone to bed to really think about how can I implement a better schedule for my house? This is driving me crazy. How can I help my kid work on, job skills without being in an employment environment, without being able to go to their, their job setting. And so it really has forced us, I think, to become more creative, but we have such amazing partners alongside with the technical assistance centers that we work with. Many of you have joined the VCU ACE Lunch and Learn opportunities. We've seen some great stuff come out of the Center for Transition Innovations to help parents of students who are of transition age. And so we just want to make sure that we're breaking this off into meaningful chunks for families. I'm not overwhelming them, but just, every week shooting out a couple of great things for them to take a look at. And I'll remind you that our newsletters are the way that we really do that, and having those accessible on social media has definitely been super helpful. And we've received a lot of positive feedback from those, and I think you'll see through the utilization data, we see a lot of folks using those as well. A reminder that we still have our parent guides accessible, and that's a great resource to share with families too. I wanted to give you these pieces of information because I think they're really valuable to share with our Sseac chairs around the state. we continue to update our return to school map and our division list. And this resource is available, and it is a link to an interactive map graphic that you can really hover and click on for any division and any county or city in the state of Virginia. And it lets you know what their current instructional model is. There's also a list by school division, so you can check out your own school division. You can look at those around you. And I think it's really interesting to note some of the patterns that we're seeing both within regions and across the state. And so, you know, I think the biggest thing sometimes that we can do in this group is to provide information directly to our local Sseacs so that they feel informed, empowered to have conversations and to come to the table with their school board members, with the leadership in their local school divisions, and really say, hey, you know, how can we help? What are the needs? How can we help to support this work? And how can we identify resources that might be needed or support that's needed by the constituency that we focus on? A great reminder is that we continue to work with local school divisions on support through the CARES and GEAR Act funding. And you guys remember CARES is the Coronavirus Relief Act. And that money was really split up into some different buckets. And we were really concerned with kind of two big buckets from the Department of Special Education and Student Services. The first was a bucket of special education funding that went directly to school divisions. And that was based off of their December 1 count. So if you think about it, every school division in the state received a portion of that CARES Act funding for special education based on the number of students with disabilities that they reported to us. And so that funding could be used for staffing support. It could be used for resources. It could be used for equipment or technology to help students. And we've seen a lot of utilization of those funds across the state. Everything from funding some temporary instructional staff to support students so that they can maintain safe social distancing within the in-person environment to assistive technology to help a student access virtual education in a way that was much more meaningful to them. And everything from doing some changes in capital improvements, maybe creating an environment that made sure that students and staff could be safe if they were in person. And so every school division has given a plan for that money. And that's also, I think, a really great discussion point for our local Sseac to say, hey, you know, what was this money used for? What do you need more of? You know, kind of having that conversation about how we're supporting specifically our students with disabilities from that first bucket. The second bucket of funding was really additional funds that are working to support mental health in schools. And so we're working with school divisions on an application basis to fund things like social emotional learning screeners to help identify students who may be struggling and how to support them more effectively, to increase school staff in that area, maybe an extra school counselor or a school psychologist to support students in the virtual environment, excuse me, to curriculum for social emotional learning and development, and curriculum to really look at things like trauma-informed care and restorative practices. And so I think you can definitely see that the topics that we talk about all the time that really are our areas of focus, everything from special education services and support, specialized instruction, to social emotional learning support. Those are the things that we directed funding at. Not only are those our priorities, but we heard very clearly from special education directors and our student support workers that those are the things that they needed at this time. And so we were able to align this funding to those areas and continue to see divisions use them in ways that we think meet their needs as best as possible. And our goal is really to create flexibility, because we know that the needs of a Fairfax might be very different than the needs of a Bath County, but those needs are still very real. And so how can we help to support them? A couple of reminders. We have some great opportunities for you all to interact with us, but I hope you will share these with your constituencies as well. Earlier this month, gosh, we're in December, sorry. Last month, we were able to launch the Office of Student Services Learning and Resource Center. And this portal is simply amazing. It's one of the most exciting things we've done in the department since I've been here, and I really encourage you to take a look at this. It is a master toolbox for all of our school, our specialized instructional support personnel. Great resources for our school counselors, our school social workers, our school nurses, and being able to not only augment their own skills, but to support them in their work. I think so often we find these individuals have so many talents so much knowledge and really a passion to support our students. But oftentimes the way that we create their environment or the way that we utilize them might not be, might not be as conducive for them to do some of that work. So we continue at the department to work closely with school divisions to make sure that we are creating a priority for these individuals to do what they do best, and that is support students. Whether that be as an individual, whether it be as a group, or really whether it be as a school community. And so this is an amazing resource that I really encourage you to take a look at. The other day, while I was out walking, I listened to a great presentation on how to conduct a one-on-one virtual counseling session. And I am obviously not a school counselor, but it was just phenomenal to listen to experts in the field and our own experts at the state level really share their expertise and really think about how this can be impactful for our students. So I hope you will take a look at that, and I hope you will share it with folks. I think it's a great way for us all to become more knowledgeable, but much more importantly for us to support these folks that are such an integral part of the work that we do in schools. I also want to remind you that we have our subscription form for our monthly newsletters. This one is to the Office of Student Services, which shares many of the information that I've talked about on this slide. But we also have our family engagement newsletter. I know many of our Sseac members are super excited about that and help us to get that out far and wide. And then we also have a newsletter from our instructional services division, which is really directed at special education teachers, and administrators, instructional assistants, anybody who is working and teaching students directly. And I encourage that parents and advocates sign up for that. Some great resources around the newest and the most effective research and instruction for students with disabilities. And so it has some really great resources when we talk about, what does teaching look like, particularly for some of the populations that we are most concerned with. And I'm just checking the chat. Yes, you can absolutely get a copy of this PowerPoint. I'm going to make sure you guys have the slides, and you can just easily click on those links too. And I will do my best after I stop talking to put some of these links in chat, so that if you want to kind of take a look around later today, you'll have them available to you. So I'm going to kind of switch gears here and talk a little bit about some things that are coming up on the horizon that I really think will be interesting for you guys to be attuned to, and just some helpful reminders. If you can believe it, the new General Assembly session will be starting soon. I know for many of us, it seems like it just ended, and that's because it did. The special session just wrapped up a couple of months ago, but we are already at the point where we're excited for the 2021 session. And a couple of reminders for this point of the year, right? So one, I know that you guys are often so interested in kind of, the front line of educational policy. And so I want to make sure that I'm reminding you of the opportunity you have through the legislative information session at the Virginia General Assembly. And here I am on the Virginia General Assembly homepage. And remember that if you go to LIS, which is the Legislative Information System, it's a great repository. Think about this as like the Virginia General Assembly Google page. And you can find everything from who your representative is in the General Assembly to bills and resolutions. But most importantly, this is your annual reminder to sign up for Lobbyist in a Box. This information allows you to get kind of direct emails to you based on topics that you're interested in. So I just saw Brian's a name pop up. So, Brian might be interested in anything that mentions private schools. He also might be interested in anything that mentions students with disabilities or special education. And so you can orient your Lobbyist in a Box to pick up on anything, any of those key search terms that you would like to kind of know about. And you can program your notifications so that, for example, every week you get an update on new bills that have been filed, changes to existing bills, and really just kind of a on-demand update for you on legislative topics that may be of interest. A couple of reminders for the session this year that make it look a little bit different. It is a short session, so it will only be 30 days. And this year, from what I understand from our leaders in the Office of Policy, is that there are also bill limits, meaning that there will be a limit to the number of bills that individuals in the General Assembly can file. And so I think that will make, obviously, for a more streamlined session. Keep in mind that the General Assembly session will be virtual this year, which, per our earlier conversation, will allow folks to maybe more fully engage, maybe check in on a YouTube link, maybe watch a committee, a House Education Committee live. And so, one, just making sure that folks are aware of that, but two, the fact that the session is probably going to go, excuse me, really quickly. But I do think that there is going to be an opportunity for quite a lot of conversation and discussion around topics that are of interest to us. And one reason why I feel really confident saying that is the work of the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission this year, or JLARC. And so I just want to remind you, I'm now on the JLARC homepage, and I will drop these links into chat for you. There are a couple of studies that are coming out this year, if they have not already, that directly impact a lot of the work that we see at the state level. You'll see here, this is the repository of all the reports that have been published. And so right at the top, you see two that probably interest you. The first is Operations and Performance of the Virginia Department of Education. This is very similar to many of the other studies that JLARC has done around state agencies, really to look at the efficiency, the operations, what can be done better or differently, and what resources may the department need to do that. I will point out that this report is really interesting. I would let you focus, a lot of the conversation in this report is around teacher education and licensure. And I think that's one of the topics that we're very interested in, talking about our personnel preparation programs, thinking about how we increase our pipeline of qualified special education teachers, how we increase our pipeline of specialized instructional support personnel, and how we not only recruit them, but most importantly, retain them. We've talked many times about the concerns we have around data for the longevity of those careers. And we know that so much time and effort from all sides is put into helping teachers become better at their job, and to think about the fact that we lose so many of our special education teachers within the first 5 years, I know is a huge concern for us. So if you're going to check out this report and you want to kind of hone in on something, that's a topic that you might really want to focus on. You'll see right here at the top, because it just happened at their November meeting, the review of the Children's Services Act and private special education day schools. It is so funny, I mentioned Brian earlier, this report talks a lot about the funding that comes from the Children's Services Act that supports many of our students participating in educational programs at private special education schools. And so I think this report is really interesting. One, I think it highlights a lot of things that we've seen discussed, both from our colleagues in the private education area, but also from local school divisions, from parents, families, and advocates, thinking about how do we support students who have significant needs, really needs that may be struggle to be addressed because of resources, because of environment, because of support in local school divisions. And so over the last few years in the General Assembly, we've seen a couple of pushes for legislation to free up additional resources within the stream of funding to support students differently. And so this report, I think, has some really strong recommendations. And, I think these could easily be taken up by legislatures to really think about how can we begin to look a little bit deeper into this process, and how can we improve it so that it's serving students more effectively. And I think it really talks about the services provided and the efficiencies within this system. And so I encourage you to take a look at that, particularly if you're working with private and day schools for special education. But most importantly, if you're, many of our members also serve on their local CPMTs or work with their local CSA coordinators. This report does a really nice job of highlighting some of the areas that are important to those constituencies, but it's also a really nice background on kind of how the process works. And I think that's really helpful for our local CX to kind of have an awareness of that process and what it looks like. I will click here on the upcoming meetings, and probably the most important meeting is coming up in a couple of weeks on December 14th. And if you'll remember back in, I believe it was 2018, JLARC received a study resolution to look at special education in the Commonwealth. And this study has been going on over the last 18 months. So we've worked very closely with the folks at JLARC. And you guys remember, I actually think it was our last in-person meeting. We actually had staff from JLARC join us, and you all have been so helpful in helping to share the parent survey information that really helped them to gather perspective and information from parents across the Commonwealth. And so I hope I speak for all of us that we're really interested in this report. And I think it will do a really great job of highlighting recommendations in areas that I think we feel really passionate about. And while I really don't have the ultimate details, I definitely think we can expect to see some trends in some areas that we talk about really frequently, right? Things like family engagement, things like individualized education programs, not just the quality of them, but also thinking about how does that fall out into the services and supports that students have identified in their IEPs. How do we think about extracurricular activities? What about secondary transition? You know, I think that we struggle with so many of these areas, and one thing I think would be really important for the Sseac to do is, once this report is made public, is obviously take some time to review it, but then also think about how this can inform our work moving forward. A couple of other areas, particularly around monitoring of local school divisions, and you guys have heard from Jeff, particularly not only about our current system, but you know a little bit about some of the changes that we're looking to make, and how we're looking to be more of an initiator in that work, and really working closely with local school divisions on a much wider level to support the effectiveness and improvement of special education in the state. And then obviously, you know, we continue to come back to kind of that bucket of dispute resolution, right? Not only how are we supporting parents and families in the formal options of dispute resolution, but you guys know for me that family engagement is such a topic of passion, right? For so many parents and families, they never even get to that point. How do we support them within their IEP meetings? How do we support them in receiving you know, positive communication? How do we equip school divisions to really do parent outreach and work with family engagement? And so I think a lot of the things in the report will probably not be a surprise to any of us, but I really hope, given your expertise, you'll look at it as a lens and say, hey, what should the department focus on? And much more importantly, you know, monitoring is a great example, and you guys have seen it firsthand. The department's out there, it's monitoring local school divisions. It comes up with corrective actions. We typically work with those divisions over a course of a year or multiple years. You know, and I think we're still faced with some of the same challenges that we talk about on a daily basis: resources, staffing, teacher preparation and education. And so, you know, I'm really excited. I hope we'll have some time to talk at our March meeting about that. My hope is to kind of help you digest that information and to serve as a support for conversations that you have around it. I know that Christine will be probably at that meeting when it's presented, and so I know she'll share that information with you. And I'm very hopeful that Sseac will work to respond to that and really reiterate the support that you guys have for the board and the work that we do, and how you can see us moving forward. So as always, I'm really grateful because you don't have a lot of time in your day-to-day life, and you always make time for things that are important for our work and for our kids. So just wanted to put that on your radar with the General Assembly and the work of JLARC. I think that will make for a really interesting session for us, and I'm excited to make sure that you guys are updated along the way, and this will be a couple of tools that can help you do that. And I am going to wrap up. I definitely want to make sure that I have some time for you guys to ask questions or kind of put things on our radar, but I just want to remind you that there is also another state agency that is a great resource for you, and that is the Virginia Department of Health. They have actually retooled their website and a lot of the information that they have available, and so there are a variety of dashboards that you can use now as you work to support your local community. Everything from what does your locality data look like to what testing might be available, and you can see that much of this information is what the governor shares at his updated press conferences. I do want to let you know of two areas that continue to evolve, and while the Virginia Department of Education is not lead on these areas, we do serve as kind of a key participant in order to make sure that public educators have the most up-to-date information, and much more importantly, supporting our local school divisions and how they get information out. And those two areas are in vaccines and testing. And so one, there have been updates to the testing capabilities across the state. There have been some new rapid tests that have been added to the market, and those have been made available in Virginia. And we see a lot of those tests being available in some of our kind of community providers, not only our primary care physicians, but folks like Walgreens, Patient First, KidMed. You know, the goal has really been to push out those supplies to those individuals because we feel that they have a lot of accessibility with their community, and oftentimes they might be the first line that a parent or family goes to if they have concerns about their health. The other area is in vaccines, and you guys are aware, if you've unless you've been living under a rock for the last 2 weeks, that there have been some really exciting updates in vaccinations for COVID-19. And at the federal level, the government is working to support state levels with their first kind of batch of those vaccines. And if I'm not mistaken, Virginia is confirmed to receive about 70,000 initial doses. And you can imagine that those vaccines have been prioritized, right? That's a drop in the bucket, really. Who are kind of the people who get those first? And definitely our frontline healthcare workers, folks who are working in our hospitals and clinics, and then also folks in our congregate care facilities. Think about our long-term care facilities, but much more importantly for us, some of our individuals that are being served in regional jails. And for us, we think about our students in our juvenile detention centers and facilities, environments where you really can't help but be close to other people. How do we make sure that those populations are protected as much as possible? And so that's where we're seeing kind of the first rollout of vaccines go to. And I think we'll continue to get updates on that, particularly as more vaccines become available, and how it's going to be, made available to the public. There has been conversation about vaccines being made available to school divisions, and I think, we've identified that as being a little premature. One, there really just aren't enough to go around at this point, and two, there really has been a priority to get them into healthcare facilities and to get them into the hands of doctors as soon as possible. And so while I think that may come up on the back end, I think we can all think about concerns with that and kind of how would that work and what does that look like, but we'll continue to keep you updated. And as I stated, we work really closely with our partners at the Virginia Department of Health, and I know that they continue to update their guidance for school environments as long as any new information becomes available. So I'm going to pause there, Christine, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm going to take a look at chat, and I'll put some of these links, I'll drop them in because I know that might be part of our subcommittee discussions as well. Before I do hand off, though, I just want to do a quick reminder. Many of you receive updates directly from the board, so this is probably duplicative, but you all are aware that the board has opened up the standards of accreditation for feedback from stakeholders. And so I just want to put a bug in your ear that if you are interested in that topic and want to dig a little bit deeper, it might be a great opportunity from one of our spring meetings to have the Office of Accountability join us and just kind of give you a refresher on the standards of accountability. And you guys remember the two pillars that kind of hold up public education are the standards of accreditation and the standards of quality. And it might be a really nice opportunity, particularly I know we have some new committee members, to just get kind of a briefing on that, but obviously talking through some of the areas that you might be interested in providing feedback on. For example, at Pat's conference earlier this week, we talked with our homeless and foster care liaisons around the standards that involve staffing and support of administrators, teachers, and our school counselors. So you can imagine that was of great interest to them. So it might be just worth thinking about you guys, hearing a little bit more about that. But as always, I defer to you, and Hank and Lisa and I stand ready to make sure that we're creating opportunities for you guys to hear from folks on topics that are of interest, and we will continue to update you on some of the exciting things that are going to be happening over the next couple of months.
Thank you, Dr. Hollins. That was great. That's a lot of information. Right at the top was the where I could find the learning resources that you were speaking about. There's a bucket of resources, and you're very good at sharing your screen. How do I get to that place? Because I didn't see the hyperlink quick enough on the slide to figure out how to navigate it for myself. So as you were talking, I was trying to get myself there and couldn't. And so if you could show us how to get there. You said there's lots of videos and resources for folks.
Absolutely, Christine. I'm going to bring up the VDOE homepage right now, and I'm taking a look at some of the chat. I had a question from PC. What is our new number of SWD based upon this year's child count? And that's a great question. That is actually happening now. December 1, the window for the December 1 child count opened. And so we're in the process of assisting local school divisions with submitting that data. And I think much like the enrollment data that came at the beginning of the school year, that data will be really interesting for us to take a look at. We want to make sure that we're monitoring that very closely because, as you can imagine, those numbers drive funding, right? So how many students really relates back to how much funding you get from the IDEA. And so we are really paying, we always pay close attention to December 1, but even more so this year because we want to make sure that we're noting any trends and decreases that have been impacted by enrollment that we're seeing across school divisions. I will tell you that school divisions are sharing with us, they're not seeing a decrease of enrollment of students with disabilities as much as they're concerned about the impact of child find and identification, particularly for some of our youngest learners. So we've been working very closely with colleagues at the University of Virginia to monitor those trends and demographics. And as the December 1 data comes in and is validated through January, that'll be a really great point that I know I will include in my update to you all at our March meeting. And I saw there were a couple other comments and I'll pop back to those, but just want to remind you, so here we go. Here is the link that I shared with you. And you go to, this is our kind of COVID-19 page here. You scroll down. This is our page with our SCSS resources that I mentioned. And so everything that we've talked about, and you've probably seen a few times by now, is located here. But here in our instruction bucket, you can go directly to this page. And here is the virtual teaching and learning hub that I mentioned today and during the presentation. And you can see there's everything here from how do you plan for virtual teaching and learning that has a lot of great resources for teachers, tips for teaching and learning online, resources for teachers, resources for parents and families. And then how do we support our students in virtual learning? What does synchronous and asynchronous instruction mean? You know, can we come up with any more difficult words to talk about? There's a teacher with you. There is not a teacher with you. And then there is our professional learning. And this is the item I mentioned that is really helpful for our teachers and our paraprofessionals. You know, how can we improve our own practice when we talk about virtual learning? And so all of this is located here within kind of this instruction hub. But you'll see there are some really other resources that we've talked about too. I know you guys, if you follow us on Twitter, have seen us promoting the just-in-time mathematics quick checks. There's some other professional development opportunities. Virginia TV Classroom continues to go strong and have outreach, particularly to individuals across the state that may have limited internet access as well. And so reminder, you can get to all of these things through the VDOE COVID-19 webpage, and that's right here at the top. But like I said, I'll shoot that link to you and get you guys those slides as well. So a couple of other questions. You know, Marguerite brought up something that has really been in the news, particularly in the Northern Virginia area, about concerns about grades, particularly the failure of students that really are struggling in the learning environment. And I think, you know, this exacerbates some of the challenges that we see within the populations that we work with. If you look at that study outside of Fairfax, coming out of Fairfax, you see that they've identified that virtual learning is a challenge for some of the most vulnerable populations, namely students that are English language learners and students with disabilities. And so, you know, I think it points to the resources we just looked at, right? How are we thinking about approaching to virtual learning? How are we creating flexibilities and what we're doing as far as, you know, assignments, grading? How do we measure student performance? How do we evaluate? You know, how do we consistently kind of come back and reframe? But, you know, I think it also bleeds over into some of the other things we talked about around social emotional learning and support. If we have students that aren't engaging in a virtual platform, is that because they're home alone and there's no one there to support their learning? Is that because parents, you know, are struggling to kind of manage multiple things, much less their students' virtual participation in school at the time? And so this is a huge concern for the department. And, you know, we are continuing to work to address this challenge and, most importantly, support our local school divisions, because as you guys know from your own children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, the point for the most important work is really at that school and classroom level, right? That teacher's relationship with the student, the support the teacher has from their administration. So how are we helping folks to kind of link all of those things together in order to make sure that students are meaningfully participating in their education, regardless of the instructional modality that they're looking at? I had another question about teacher, you know, stress and just, I think, challenges within this new environment. And we are so aware of that. We talk to so many of our teachers on a daily basis. And I think if you see from our student services newsletter, we have really reoriented, particularly during this time of year, to think about how we can help teachers manage stress effectively, how we can help them maintain a positive mindset, and how we can remind them to take care of themselves. And so you'll see a lot of our resources on mindfulness, of support, but also we've been really excited to provide an opportunity for some communities of practice for our practitioners. And our training and technical assistance centers, our TTACs, have been great with that support and just creating, I think, a safe environment for teachers to come together, to share ideas, to share challenges and really support each other. And that has been so important in this day and time. And the great thing about virtual is that we're able to connect teachers who may not be in the same school, may not be in the same region or county, and really help them team up with somebody who really is experiencing the same challenges they are, and really building that relationship and support for them. And it's become incredibly important. Yeah, Brian asked a great question about an update on the standards of learning tests. And this is so timely, right? You guys remember last spring, there was a conversation about assessment and accountability, and the federal government actually waived the federal tests that were required for accountability for them. That has not happened this year. So there are certain tests, because they are federally required, that the state has little to no flexibility with it. If we're still required to give those tests must move forward. However, the state superintendent of public instruction, Dr. James Lane, has provided some significant flexibilities where the state is able to around the standards of learning tests. And I know you guys are probably so sick of me sharing my screen, but I'm going to do it one more time today because I want to remind you where all of the documentation around those are. If you go onto the DOE homepage, you'll see the superintendent's memos link, and you can click right here. And I'm trying to think, there are some examples right here of how that flexibility is being navigated. One, there's some emergency guidelines for the use of local performance assessments to verify writing. So you guys know that's an alternative to the writing standards of learning tests. There are some emergency guidelines here to the Virginia Studies, Civics, and Economics and Grade 8 writing standards of learning tests. And so, we've worked directly with superintendents. Dr. Lane actually has a call with superintendents every other week to make sure they are aware of this information. We've been pushing this information out directly to special education directors, as well as the points for testing. Every division has what they call a division director of testing, and that person is kind of the hub of all information related to assessment. And so we have made sure that any flexibility that we are able to and have offered for the standards of learning test is available. And I think we'll continue to see some of that flexibility rolled out, particularly as we get to the busy testing season, which is the spring, and really thinking about, what does that look like, particularly for school divisions who are still 100% virtual. And so more on that to come 100%. Let's see. Okay, funding coupled to the testing and enrollment. Yeah, so funding is tied to enrollment, both through what we call average daily membership, or ADM, and that's taken at a couple quarterly throughout the state. So it's kind of like a roll call of students being served in local school divisions. And if you remember, that's where I noted some concerns with decreases in enrollment for some of our school divisions across a number of grade and age levels. The biggest impact has been, as you can imagine, on kindergarten, right? Think about yourself as a parent of a kindergartner. And going into this year, maybe it was a virtual kindergarten. For any of us who can remember our 5 or 6 year olds, you're probably a little concerned at this point, right? And maybe you're thinking, oh, maybe I'll just hold them back for one more year and see about that reentry process. And so I think that has been a huge reality for a lot of our school divisions. But I serve Region 6 directly. I work very closely with the superintendents in kind of the lower Shenandoah Valley, and they have seen some really big impacts on a variety of grade levels and ages. And so they see a lot of students being moved back to homeschool or being served in a different way. And as you can imagine, if those students aren't being counted as being served by that school division, that funding isn't there. And so the state superintendent, as well as the Secretary of Education, have been staunch advocates for helping to explain to the General Assembly about how that can impact funding, and really putting forth this idea of what's called hold harmless. So if you think about it, it's a way to say, hey, given all the challenges, given all the contextual, all the things that are happening, can we just kind of press pause and monitor this number so that school divisions aren't getting punished for kind of this crazy situation that is impacting enrollment? And so you can imagine, and I'm looking at Dr. Castle, that can be a huge area of concern for local school divisions. And I will say, for many of the school divisions that I work with, particularly for our smaller school divisions that really, their funding structure looks different, right? And think about, everything from their local funding, the state funding, and the federal funding. You can really get hit multiple times. And for them, that's not going to be just kind of like cutting off the foam at the top, right? That's going to be cutting teacher positions. And you can imagine the stress, the heartache, and the impact that can have on our students. And so, hold harmless for ADM funding is one huge priority. And I would say that as we continue to monitor December 1, making sure that it really is our job. I'll say it is my job to make sure that the state superintendent and that the Department of Planning and Budget is aware of how December 1 can be impacted as well, and making sure that we are maintaining the funding and support to serve our students that are the most vulnerable, particularly our students with disabilities. So, you know, it's a really important topic. I think it's a really timely topic to make sure that our local Sseacs are supporting their local school divisions and really advocating for some of this flexibility that, if not available, could have significant detrimental effects to local school communities. So, Christine, I think I touched on most of the comments that came in, and so I will again pause and see if there are any other questions or concerns. And I really appreciate the comments around the information provided. I'm so aware that I feel like I just, you know, pour on you guys, but you're such great, you know, repositories of information. I'll make sure you have these slides so that you don't have to recreate the wheel, and hopefully it will ease your burden of sharing with other folks as well. Really grateful for your time and attention as always.
No, thank you for that, Dr. Hollins. Are there any other questions from the committee members that you'd want to unmute yourselves and ask Dr. Hollins directly?
I just want to mention and thank Dr. Hollins for your presentation. It's also good if we can get bullet points that really help us advocate for, you know, supporting our budget that really supports all of our children. But clearly, if we could have just a couple bullet points that we can, you know, elevator talk to neighbors, to friends, to colleagues. I mean, I think that the more we can say those things about how important it is to make sure we're getting our funding, that really helps support continuing to make sure that our students are getting their needs met. So, and teachers as well. So if there's something, if you could give us, could give us a couple bullet points that you think really would be really good talking points for us as parents to really kind of make sure we're telling our neighbors, our friends, or anybody that we encounter that how important it is to support this, that this is a time that it's critical that we continue to support our education budgets.
Absolutely, Michael. That's a great idea, and I will include some of those talking points and some of the other areas that I showcased in the email that I sent Christine, so she can just forward that back out to you guys. That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I will say that oftentimes when I've gone out to local Sseacs to provide training, you know, one of their requirements is that the Sseacs within the locality share the information that they're hearing about during those meetings. And what is oftentimes forgotten is they have an opportunity as representatives sitting on their local Sseacs to go before their local school board and share, you know, make it important that students with disabilities be a priority. And in addition to that, they can go to their local government bodies as well and make public comment. You know, oftentimes that task is taken on by the superintendents of the divisions, and they go before their local government to say, you know, you need to keep funding education. So I think in any way that you can make that the talking point, that would your local division would greatly appreciate that. I'm looking to see if I see another question that came in for Dr. Hollins. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, evaluation timelines have not been held. Psychological testing virtually are not always accurate. What is your stand?
Yeah, so great question, Marguerite. And absolutely, you know, I think we've seen a huge impact to not only identification and evaluation, but obviously, you know, reevaluations of students that are already identified. So the department has been very straightforward in our guidance going back to the spring that those evaluations need to be held within a timely fashion. And I think we're kind of beyond the point of where we were like March, April of, you know, hey, it was like total lockdown, right? And some of those things, there are flexibilities within existing state and federal regulations that give teams the ability to extend that timeline. I think for a lot of people, that was the number one concern when things were kind of really at a high level. However, as we transition to the summer months, and obviously now that has become less of an issue. And if you guys remember, part of the governor's first wave of flexibility came with allowing individuals to be brought back into school buildings for things like evaluations and testing. And so this, thinking about, myself, Sam is a student who's been identified as being suspected of having a disability. I was able to get permission, not the student, the evaluators, the team was able to get permission to bring that student in a really safe environment and to conduct that testing, on a one-on-one session, face-to-face. Marguerite's right. I think we've also seen a lot of flexibility in the provision of virtual assessments. Telemedicine and teletherapy has really just kind of taken off as a result of these things. But I think we all know that that is not always appropriate for every student or for every assessment and evaluation. And so we've really tried to do both hands. One is continue to move forward the flexibility with teletherapy and telemedicine and, working with our partners in the Department of Medical Assistance Services to do that. But on the other hand, making sure that there's flexibility for teams to be able to come back in person and conduct those tests. And so we really heard and worked directly with local special education directors. We actually held a webinar across the summer on identification, eligibility, and assessment with a focus on some of our youngest learners, because those are the individuals that really are usually being assessed initially, or maybe re-evals look a little bit tricky for them. And so we were able to really provide some great resources and support. But I think most importantly, just tell folks that, hey, this is okay, this can be done, and this is how to do it safely. And so just a reminder that at no point have there been any waivers to IDEA, both at the federal or the state level. And so, we wanted to make sure that school divisions could work within existing guidance and still be safe, and make sure that families and students felt safe about engaging in that process. And, Marguerite, I do not know if that was recorded or not, but I will reach out. Marie Ireland and Dawn Hendricks did that for us. So if it's okay, I'm going to just put that on Hank and Lisa, maybe to follow up with them. If they did not record, I know that there were slides that they used for that presentation, and we'll make sure to share that with you guys. You're welcome. Great question. Thank you.
Awesome. Real quickly, does the Board of Education review the summaries or the reports that come out of JLARC, and do they tend to make recommendations to their subcommittees?
They absolutely review those reports, Christine, and I know that they are very attuned to the three that we mentioned today. And so many of the recommendations, as you look through the reports, may direct the board to do things, or may direct the General Assembly to do things, or may direct the department to do things. So the most important thing that comes out of those reports are the recommendations themselves. It then has to have action behind those recommendations. So you're right on with saying that, if the board looks at the recommendation and they decide to take that under advisement, that's kind of the next step. I would also say that for Sseac, there are two things to be really well aware of. One is that the Department of Education will also provide a response letter to the report, and you'll see those examples both within the CSA study and the agency study. That is, I think, just another thing for you guys to look at. But I would think that Sseac would want to, one, respond to the report as well, and then two, as you kind of think about your annual report, how are you going to identify some of those buckets within the recommendations and help the board to prioritize those things? And I think, as I stated, many of those buckets really already align to some of the areas that you all are working on and want to see movement on and want to see resources put behind. So I would hope that we can be helpful in that, really, as our work throughout the spring of kind of thinking about, okay, here are the recommendations, here's all of the annual report from the board, all of our work. As we move forward for kind of orienting to the next year, how are we taking all of that and really kind of drumming it down into areas that we know we are most passionate about and we really think need the most attention across the Commonwealth?
Thank you for that. That actually, you just opened up an opportunity to sort of ask or get your feedback on. Yesterday, I brought up the possibility of sharing our annual report with the Board of Education, later in our current administrative year, because as it is right now, they get our annual report of our activities after a couple months after our administrative year has come to an end. And so, would it be out of the realm of possibilities that they would want to receive our annual report earlier? Our bylaws just indicate that it's by October 1 that we submit that report to them. And if that were the case, these are all some things to take into consideration to add to that annual report.
Absolutely, Christine. And Hank actually sent me a communication last night about the conversation about that. So I've actually reached out to Emily Webb, who is staff that supports the Board of Education, just to kind of make sure if there's anything on their end that would inform us to the lack of flexibility there. There's nothing there that I know of, so I have expressed the Sseac's preference for that, and we'll definitely make sure that you guys are updated on that as soon as I have an answer back from her.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay. Are there any additional questions for Dr. Hollins? I'm not seeing any. I have one question that's a little off topic, but maybe not. Have you encountered with any of the local school divisions a challenge with the comprehension test that is tied to the regulation around restraint seclusion? Because of the go ahead. All staff members have to complete the modules, the training modules, and then there's a comprehension test at the end. Have you encountered any of the local school divisions that for all staff members, you know, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, what have you seen that the comprehension test what was challenging for folks?
Yeah, Christine, no, we have not. I haven't received any direct inquiries on that. And if you guys remember, we worked really closely with Old Dominion University on our module that we prepared that kind of met that first tier of training that was made free of charge and available to local school divisions, many of whom I know are availing themselves of that option. But no, we've had no reports of issues. There have been a couple of technical issues, folks taking the test and then not seeing their certification kind of process back to them, but the folks at ODU have been able to answer any of those concerns and make sure that folks have what they need in advance of the enactment date, which happens January 1 of 2021.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Great to be with you. Wonderful to see all of you. I know we won't see each other. We're already into the holiday season, but a reminder that, you know, the great topic was brought up today about supporting our educational professionals and the stress that they're feeling. I just want to communicate, I think that's really appropriate for this group as well. I'm looking at so many of the faces and I see folks that are working in schools, parents, folks that are providing support services for students, other agencies, our higher ed collaborators, you know, the team at PC, individuals, you know, who are running their own businesses or, you know, doing their own 9-to-5s. Just make sure you take some time this season to take care of yourself, to recharge, to do something that brings you joy. And I'm really excited to rejoin you in 2021 to continue the most important work I think there is to do in the Commonwealth, and that is to safeguard and support and make sure that our students are successful. And I'm so excited and grateful for the positive collaboration we have with this group of experts. And I just really appreciate your time and dedication to the work that we do together. And I know I speak for Hank and Lisa and myself that we are so grateful for everything you do for us as a department. And we are excited to begin another year with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Look at that thumbs up from everyone for Dr. Hollins and the team at VDOE. Thank you. Oh, look at that. Awesome. Well, you know, we're just about at 9:15. So, you know, how about if we take a 5-minute break? Do we need 5-10 minutes? Show fingers. 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Okay, so let's come back at 9:20. Thank you all so much. Okay, I have 9:20. I don't know if everybody is back and has returned. There we go. Now I'm seeing some folks. Welcome, welcome. Awesome. Hey. Okay. We're getting there. We're just about there. I'll wait for a couple more screens to appear. Oh, there's Mr. Millward. You are up next, sir.
Are you ready?
Uh-oh. Are we ready?
Everybody back?
It looks like we have a lot of our folks here.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I've checked the Sseac mailbox, and as of today, we only have 2 public comments. The first one came from a parent from Franklin County, and it reads as such. I write you today to express my extreme concern for my child and all the other children in this county who are not receiving an education due to COVID. I understand the fear regarding this virus. However, I believe our bigger fear should be that surrounding our many students who are failing due to virtual learning. This system does not work for majority of families I have spoken with. Children who have legally binding IEPs are not being provided the accommodation that have been agreed upon in said IEPs. My son is one of those children. He has went from A to B honor roll to failing. His attempts to complete assignments mostly fail, as do his attempts at watching and reading the required material. I genuinely believe the reason for this decline in his grades and performance is due to virtual learning. The new system is not working. My son feels as though he is not retaining the information being presented, and I feel as though he has given up. I fear he will want to quit school because of the lack of structure and lack of classroom participation. He is also stressed, overwhelmed, depressed, anxious, and angry. He struggles daily with feelings of failure and feels like he is letting people down. It has been proven time and time again, these emotions in teens leave them at a higher risk for suicide. I am one person reaching out to our county officials, begging you to help get our children back into the classroom full time. This pandemic is causing more damage emotionally than the virus would. I know there are students, the self-contained classroom, who are attending school 4 days a week. Pre-K through second grade are attending school 4 days a week. I have to ask a question. What about our older students? They wear their masks, they understand the concept of social distancing, and they know how to use common sense practice such as washing their hands. Our older students need to be in school. These are the students trying to get into colleges and trying to start careers. The self-contained classroom are being given opportunities to succeed, while others are being refused a free and public education. Even if our children were allowed to go to school and do their work online, at least then they can have that structure and have an educator on site able to answer questions. Please don't sweep this under the rug. I know our governor is mandating. However, at some point, we as a community need to stand up for our children. This is what I am doing now. I am also encourage others to do the same. Thank you for your time and consideration. I can tell you that this constituent also sent an email directly to me, and my office is reaching out and will be responding directly to her on her concerns specifically related to her allegations of her child not receiving services. And we'll also be discussing her other concerns as well.
Hank, can you send me that email so that I can put that in the minutes?
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right, the second one comes from a constituent who doesn't say where she's coming from, but it starts off, members of state Sseac. I just reviewed your October minutes and was troubled seeing that even though Virginia is out of compliance for having more than 1% on the VAP track, the state Sseac endorsed the waiver. What is Virginia's percentage currently? Why would supporting this serve the interests of our special needs children? In my school district, Loudoun County, they had asked us in kindergarten to see if we wanted to modify our curriculum to help make my child's curriculum more accessible. I asked if they were specifically talking about VAP as an alternative assessment, and they said yes. In kindergarten, I later emailed our entire class parents and find out they proposed it to the majority of the other children too. I believe there were many other options for the school could have proposed, but the tool in their tool belt that they prefer to reach for is VAP instead of reading specialists, speech therapists, OT, tutors, assistive technology, or even just using manipulatives such as base 10 blocks. They'd rather propose VAP. To have our own state Sseac back any waiver feels as badly as I felt for my child when the school proposed VAP. It is a huge betrayal. You need to do better. VDOE needs to do and be better as well. An extremely heartbroken parent. And my office will be reaching out to this constituent as well. And I will send that one to you also, Marguerite. And those are the only two public comments received as of today.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so now we're back into subcommittee discussion. You know, yesterday we heard a lot, we shared a lot. We were trying to develop some solutions to some of the challenges, and you know, the challenge continues to be, or the focus and priority continues to be, how do we better serve students in a virtual environment? So if, you know, I'm going to call on Brian. I know I haven't sort of given you all a heads up, but any thoughts, sir, if you would like to lead some discussion around with that would involve policy and regulation?
Sure. First, I'd like to maybe go over some of the recommendations that came from the JLARC study for the CSA in private schools that I think would pertain to our group. Just something that we may need to think about as far as recommendations go for the board and things like that. This is just a very brief summary. 18 recommendations came out of the report that I have here, in relation to private days and CSA as a whole and things like that. I've kind of highlighted some, not all 18 of them. I don't think are pertinent to us or anything like that. But so the first one, and these aren't in any particular order or anything like that, but it's an annual reporting of rates for private day schools. I think we do publish our rates on the CSA website. I don't know if all schools do, but again, it's something that they want to make sure everyone's doing. A standardized reporting process for tuition rates, just to make it, consistent across all the private facilities. One of the big ones I feel is using CSA funds to help students transition back into public schools. Another one would be using CSA funds to, for students in public school to prevent them from having to go to a more restricted placement. And this one, I'm sure Hank is all in favor for. They're saying that the money should be transferred to the VDOE for them to provide the money for students to attend private schools or residential facilities for educational purposes. I don't know, Hank, if you have anything else to add to that one. I think that one's probably the biggest one for the VDOE right there.
I was going to say, Brian, you've got a no coming from Dr. Castle. So Dr. Castle.
Yeah, I don't know if Hank has an opinion. I think we need to be careful about that one because CSA is some sufficient. What that means, and I'm certainly not the state budget expert, but what that means is there's not a budget. What it costs is what it costs, and the state funds that. When it goes to DOE, I can't imagine it's going to be some sufficient. There's not an endless checkbook there. That's never happened in my lifetime in DOE, and I've been in this 30 years plus. So I think that one's got to be really thought through.
No, I'm not saying it's
sure. I realize it's not. You're the messenger. I'm not. Brian and I disagree on a couple of things here. I am really happy to hear talk about CSA funds being used to keep our students in their local neighborhood schools in the least restrictive setting and to transition back. I think that is, and you and I have had this discussion. We've had it at Sseac before, but that's problematic for us when we're missing a couple of steps on the spectrum between keeping the child in the least restrictive environment and going to a CSA placement because we're not allowed to access the funds in public school like you are.
Yeah, sure.
That one at the DOE is the big one that I think really needs to be.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Appreciate that, and Dr. Castle.
Yeah, please. Everybody else gets a first name here.
Yeah, Jeff.
First name's Jeff. Please.
Hey, ex-military. I'm either really inappropriately informal or excessively formal. It's one or the other. I'd like to follow up with you, Brian, on this a little bit later because we're both in Roanoke. So,
okay.
but I got a couple of things. Is my son attends a private day school. I used to be on the board of a private day school, and I knew about phase-on when we lived in Richmond. So I've got some experience on this issue, and I think I know that what the organization you represent has a great reputation for transparency. So I just want to compliment you on that publicly. I will say that what's driving this from my observation over the last 5 to 10 years is a lack of transparency for a couple of schools, and also a lack of cooperation with CSAs, which really, I believe, the pandemic exposed. Specifically, not willing to disclose what services are being provided for a full rate and things like that. And so I think this is, I think it's going to happen. The legislatures have figured out what's going on, and unfortunately, they may overcorrect to the detriment of organizations like yours and other private day schools that are not getting, shall we say, a really high profit margin. Yeah, and so I'm concerned because I agree with Jeff that if it goes to VDOE, that's going to be a problem. At the same time, we've got to acknowledge that there are some outliers out there that are not operating with, shall we say, respect to the fact that unlimited budget doesn't mean unlimited responsibility and communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, again, transparency is of utmost importance, and certainly your relationships with your LEAs and your CSAs and things like that. I think we're around here, we're starting to do I haven't been in this area working too long. I was in Covington previously. So I'm still learning the system here, but I think we're doing a good job starting to have those conversations and meetings just to work together, and that's what we're trying to do right now. And I hope that's happening elsewhere throughout the state too. Another recommendation was for IEP teams to be able to make recommendations to FAPT for services for students. I thought that was pretty, not that they don't, but I think it was kind of more allowance to do that. Another big one, I think, is also, and I think this one is good. It's only using CSA funds. If you want to use the CSA funds, the school or facility needs to be licensed by the Virginia Department of Education. Another couple smaller ones, they want their teacher data published about, the teachers in each of the private schools, their data published about, how long they've been a teacher, what type of license they have, and those types of things. They also want a new restraint and seclusion policy for private schools, but I'm not sure. That doesn't make sense to me because we've already had one for years, and it's the public schools that didn't have one. So I don't know, Hank, do you have any thought on that one?
Well, on a restraint and seclusion policies, they want us to try and mirror the public school regulations as closely as possible to ensure that as students move between the facilities, that they're not subject to different rules or whatever. But there's a lot of discussion on how that's got to look because private school students are not the same as public school students, and the public school regs apply to all students, not just students with special needs. And I'm not doing an item by item yet, but probably will have to at some point. But what I've looked at is some of the positives that will come out of that. There are some deeper definitions for seclusion and or a restraint, not being a hold type thing that a lot of private schools use and report as a restraint, because that's how our current regulations kind of put it in that category because there's nowhere else to put it. So I see some good things coming out of it, but there's going to be a lot of discussion before we just flip those public school regs into the private school regs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. All right, and then the last one, which I also think is a good idea. Any child receiving services paid for by CSA would be a statewide survey for parents to fill out. I'm guessing annually, just to make sure that the service is meeting the children's needs and things like that. So those are the main ones I felt were kind of pertinent to our group, at least. But again, I certainly, as Dr. Holland said, recommend you to go look at them on the JLARC website, and if you want to look at them further and everything. So just wanted to bring those up for everybody, and to include those. We can obviously talk more about it at our next meeting. I'll kind of delve into a little bit more for the committee, just to kind of put together some recommendations that we could put forth to the board as well. But if you want to discuss further about these, we can. If we want to prioritize them, we can. Those types of things. But I'll leave it up to the group to decide. But Pat, looks like you have something to say.
Hi, Brian. Yeah, I just did want to, I think Aaron would probably agree with me. What we're seeing, and we've shared some of our concerns with our students in foster care as they're transitioning out of more restrictive settings and how long they're out of school. I think some of the recommendations that you shared on both being able to maintain them in public school prior to those moves and also the transition back would address some of the serious concerns we've seen for our students in foster care. So I'd be real interested in crafting that piece into anything we want to write on that.
Okay.
Aaron?
I'd like to just offer a compliment to Brian. I think sometimes people think public schools and private schools are in competition or that we're always in disagreement. They provide a valuable service for many of our students, and certainly we need to have them. We could not have a better representative than Brian, because I think he and his organization, honestly, do it the right way. As Mike points out, there's maybe a couple bad apples that are boiling the barrel, as often happens. Brian, I appreciate your work on that and our discussions over the years. And I think this is, there's been work committees of the General Assembly going on since about 2015, I think. Hank, has it been that long? Probably. It's
at least.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years. I've served on a couple. Brian has. I think we're finally making some progress on some of these. At least getting the discussion out in public more.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Thanks to everybody for the help on that.
And what I can tell you is VDOE isn't sitting back on a wait and see what's going to happen. Some of the things in those recommendations that were made, we're looking at prior to the study coming out. So you may see, even though some of it doesn't go completely through that some of the things that were recommended will be a VDOE initiative of itself, if not directed by the General Assembly. So we're looking at it pretty closely.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure you were back from break when we had a little discussion about the budget part of that going to DOE. And I certainly don't speak for DOE. Hank can do that, but I cautioned.
Oh, no, Hank can't.
I cautioned about being careful of budgeting CSA funds through DOE because they do not become sum sufficient at that point.
Yeah, I heard that conversation, and we're 100% agreement on that. That's a sticking point. And what does that truly mean if it's coming back to VDOE? You know, how's those funds going to flow? And yeah, like I said, we're not in a wait and see mode, because if this goes into effect, we need to be able to react, you know, within the timeline, and rather than sit back. So we're having discussions now on what that means, and we're providing, you know, our response to the JLARC and so on. So for us, it's a work in progress.
Definitely a hot topic on social media within the private day school community.
Luckily, I stay off social media, so. All right. Did anyone have any other questions or comments about that, Claire?
Yeah, well, just since I'm relatively new to the committee and this is only my second meeting, I just wondered what our recommendations or responses to JLARC's reports usually look like, or what we should have in mind in responding to them.
Well, you know, I think this is really one of the first times that we be able to respond to a JLARC study, at least in my tenure here. But I don't know.
I agree with you, Brian, that this is the first time, at least since I've been on the committee, that we would have or would offer a response to JLARC. So
yeah. So I mean, it can look like whatever we want, I guess. I mean, we have written, you know, responses to other things as well. You know, we might be able to, I don't know if we have a previous one we could look at to help us guide the one we would write and everything. I think we should probably combine them all in one. So waiting until the next study comes out as well, rather than writing two responses, it'd probably be best just to do one. But maybe Christine or Hank can dig one up from previous years or something.
You're looking for a format on how to respond to the JLARC?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might be able to come up with a template that we've used, or, you know, show you how Dr. Hollins has prepared a response and kind of give you the format of that. But
yeah, that would
I don't believe there's any requirement or any special way that any comments sent to the JLARC had to be presented. But I will look at that and provide you some kind of a template. You can look
that'd be great. If you want to just send it to me or me and Christine, that's fine, I guess.
All right.
All right. Anything else on those?
I would ask what so it sounds like you're maybe looking for two responses. A response from the state Sseac that would go back to JLARC once the Virginia Department of Education has an opportunity to respond. Will VDOE respond to CSA, the CSA summary?
I was thinking maybe our response would just go to our response to the JLARC study would go to the Board of Education.
Okay. Within the annual report or prior to the annual report?
That's a question we can decide. I mean, I don't know what would be better.
Hank, can you help us out?
I would think that if you're wanting to comment about the CSA study, the earlier they get it, the better. And again, that's just more information for us to review as we're looking through and waiting to see what we're directed to do and what we're working on independently. And if you're sending it to the board, then the templates I were talking about may not be appropriate. Christine, it would probably be something similar to what you did when you responded to some of the other public comment requests.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Just a basic letter saying this is our review, this is our comment, these are our recommendations, these are our concerns, whatever. I would keep it short. I mean, keep it simple, and you know, it can be as lengthy as it needs to be, but it doesn't need to be a dissertation.
Right. So Brian, do you have some recommendations. You sort of read through the list that was not in a particular order, but we have talked the past several years about the CSA funds being used for students to be able to transition back into the public school setting, and for them to be utilized in the least restrictive environment. So that has come up on more than one occasion.
Yeah, well, I think, I know it's a busy time for everyone. I think everyone, deserves the right to read the recommendations for themselves first and maybe put some thought into it. And if you want to email me your thoughts or your own, and I can put them all together, and have it ready for the next meeting, or me, Christine, can go back and forth with it as well. So whatever the group feels is necessary, we'll work on. If people want to spend some time on it today, that's fine with me too.
Okay, I will say that our next meeting won't occur until March. And so I don't know how quickly you're thinking the board should receive a public comment response from us. Is that too far out?
I don't think that's too far out, because again, this has got to go through General Assembly and whatever. So, the comments will all be taken into consideration at that time. So I think March would be sufficient. And the earlier the better, certainly. But if you can't get it till March because you want to meet in a committee to do it, that's fine.
Okay. I just needed some guidance on, how far down the road.
Unless somebody else on the committee has another thought. I mean, that would be my position from the department level.
Dr. Hollins talked about watching the General Assembly and just being aware and involved there. And I think this is one we need to watch at the General Assembly. I would agree with Hank. I don't think it's going to move through real quickly, or we're going to see changes probably in this short session. But who knows what the General Assembly does. We need to keep an eye on this one as a group, I think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, which recommendations they look at and see are important that they, make bills for and things like that.
Yeah, some of the recommendations are pretty simple and can get passed and pushed through pretty easily. The others, the whole bit about moving it to the VDOE could take a much deeper discussion than the issue of mandating that a private school can't take a student if they're not licensed and receive CSA funding. That's a simplified issue to address. I mean, not simple, but not as deeply involved in the weeds as saying, hey, let's move all these funds to DOE. That's going to take some time.
Yeah,
a little bit easier issue with mandating that you have to be licensed than let's move a whole pot of money to another agency.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, you bring up a really good point to say that Dr. Hollins is recommending that we pay very close attention to those General Assembly discussions. And are we outside of our authority or purview if we begin contacting the General Assembly members and providing feedback?
I think normally you want to wait until the bills come out before you start contacting them. And then, we can even draft support of bills, get to, and give some verbiage on what to write to your local representatives and things like that.
Yeah, I think that would be a key thing. There's a lot of people on this committee, and you almost need to have one or two spokespeople who are putting together points, as Brian says. If CSA is complicated in many ways, and so when you have 20 people read it, you can leave with 5 different interpretations, and then by the time that message gets to the legislator, it's 10 different messages. And so I think it's going to be important to have a pretty concise and not short, as Hank says, but a template, I guess. I think this is a good topic, my opinion. This is a good topic for March, and maybe getting a template together and getting our thoughts and bullets down and what we can agree on as a group, as a committee, before we begin to have too much conversation. My point about General Assembly for this year is just to be careful that something doesn't get put in there in a bill and goes through General Assembly and nobody notices it.
I think that's what I was referring to. You know, they oftentimes move things very quickly when they want to get something through. And so if we're seeing that they are about to take action on and we haven't had that opportunity.
I think my thought on that, Christine, would be like I get daily briefings almost from VSBA, School Board Association, and from VAS. Many of you are in professional organizations where you get probably daily briefings during General Assembly, whether it's through, maybe Aaron gets them from Department of Social Services. I'm sure Dr. Pop gets them through her work with homeless organizations as well as with DOE. So I think if any of us were to see something around CSA that's concerning to us, or even see something around this, maybe contacting you and then trying to get that message out to the committee and the broader audience would be an important action to take, seems to me.
Yeah, definitely go on that you know, the General Assembly website and sign up for those notifications, because they are really good. And I usually go back. I haven't signed up for the notification before, but I go back and peruse through the different bills that are out there, you know, looking for keywords and things like that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring up for the group that they've already filed 2 CSA bills. That one just was filed on the 19th in the Senate, and there's one that was referred from the last session in the House, but to expand funding. So they may move on that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That's my concern, that they'll move quick.
All right, so I guess, you know, just moving forward, you know, if you want to, you know, go back and read the JLR report for the CSA, you know, please go ahead and do so. I guess if you want to email me any thoughts, you know, you can go ahead and do that. I guess everyone has access to my email address. I'm not going to shout it out right here or anything like that, but
I would just want to remind everybody that if you do email one another, you can only do it individually. Do not include all of us individual emails to Brian, myself, or any of the other members, please. Go ahead, Brian. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Do you want me just to put it in the chat? Would that be easier?
Sure.
All right. Okay. Well, I mean, that's all I have. I'll put my email in there. If we want to move on to the next committee, I think I've taken up enough time.
No, but they're really good talking points, Brian. So I appreciate that.
Hey, Christine.
Yes, sir.
Before you go to the next committee, let me share an email with you. Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Here's a response I got from the board on your request for moving the report to July or June or whatever you decide. We don't see any concerns with making this change. Recommend that the bylaws be updated to reflect the change, and the report will be added to the 2021 board planning guide. Once it comes to Sam and I will update that to put the report on the agenda for the month that you want it to be done. And you were thinking what, June or July?
I was thinking June, right at the end. That's the last month of our administrative year. I don't know what the committee's thoughts are on that.
And that's why I threw it out there to see if you needed to discuss it, get consensus, take a vote, whatever. Because I'll need to update that board planning guide as soon as it comes out.
We get a motion. I'm sorry.
What are the specific dates for June and July that they have the meeting?
They actually just shared their calendar.
I'll tell you in a minute. The June board meetings is the 17th. And you all meet in March.
Correct.
So
So that's about the same kind of time frame that we are working from when we finish our report in July to present in September. So, you know, it's just about, are you ready to make that transition? I don't know specifically what would need, if anything in the bylaws would need to be changed, because the only date that it states is that they receive the report by October 1. So I don't believe that any change would be needed to reflect an earlier date.
So I'd like to make a motion that we move the date and then we can discuss it afterwards if there's a second.
Okay. So there is a motion on the floor from Michael to move the annual report presentation to the Board of Education to June, the month of June. Is there a second?
Pat, I'll second it.
Pat? Okay. Is there any discussion?
Just one thing along with that, I would like, to recommend that we add the executive committee members meeting only be changed to March 10th of next year as well.
I already put that on my calendar to make that change. So.
Okay, I just want to make sure, that's all.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to call the roll. If you could respond with aye or nay. I'm going to start with Danny.
Aye.
Meredith.
Aye.
Kendra. She may have stepped away. Delana's not here. Jeff.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Mr. Garrison.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Marguerite.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Tasha.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Thank you. Rob.
Aye.
Jill.
Aye.
Reagan. Let's see. Brian.
Aye.
Joan. I see Joan just joined. Joan, aye or nay to move the annual report to June? She looks like she's unmuted. I'll come back. Sandy, I don't see her. And Mr. Wallon.
Aye.
Okay, the chair votes aye, the motion carries. We will move our annual report to the Board of Education to June and add an additional day to March for the executive committee members and eliminate the extra day that's typically scheduled for July. And I think, Hank, you're following what I'm saying, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, great. All right, well, on that note, if you all can pull up your annual reports now and start taking a look, maybe we can ask Hank of the recommendations that we had presented to the Board of Education, a status update on some of those recommendations.
I don't have that report available to me right now.
Okay. So then let me move on to Matt and see if Matt has some talking points to come out of student achievement and student outcomes.
Well, I'm going to open it up to my team, but I think after hearing everything that everybody said yesterday, just repeating, the relationships, collaboration, creativity, it seems like every time I have a recommendation, then turn around and find a resource that's already existing. But I do think that I would just like to tell people that the PT training, I know I've said it already, the Transition University, I think Kendra showed that it can work at a school system if the school system wants to use it as a professional training for their teachers for transition IEPs, and it could help with indicators 13 and 14. But that's about the only suggestion I have. And then if, of course, if Kendra or Tashu, and I don't know if Regan is still on there, if anybody else have any suggestions, or open it up to everybody to, if there's any topics they would like to add. We all know what's impacting outcomes, and just trying to find strategies through these, challenging times, how we can improve them. Supporting teachers, students, families.
Okay, let's help them out, folks. Let's offer some suggestions. How can we improve student outcomes? How can we support the teachers and students in this environment? Was there something in what Dr. Hollins was sharing this morning on that resource page of strategies? I haven't had an opportunity to take a look at all of those.
Yeah, she had a lot of good stuff that I had mentioned. But that's about all I can think of at this time.
Hey, this is Joan. First of all, I want to apologize for being late. I had a work issue come up, but on this topic, and it may have been covered already this morning, but I think, for some of the kids with special needs, and maybe their parents don't have a lot of experience with internets and Zooming and that kind of thing, if there could be some type of training for the parents, to get them a little bit up to speed for those that aren't fluent with that kind of stuff. And this may have already been said today, but that's one thing that comes to mind is in our area, we do have a lot of parents and grandparents that are raising children and just don't have that technology background at all. So this is, and I think those kids are just falling right through the cracks because, especially the younger ones. So that's my 2 cents. I would like to see some type of parent training and, and really, I think it's going to be tough to get hold of some of these people, but, if they're invested in their child's education, they should want to do that, but, or even have a help desk type thing where they can call in, and there may be school divisions that have that, but.
And I think it's a great idea, Joan. And I think that Matt kind of touched on that yesterday when he talked about things like having people's pictures on when they're agreeing or off when they're not agreeing, that kind of thing. I've been to several, again, I've attended some teacher seminars as a parent, but they just had some things like, again, being animated, like Mike has been animated in his conversation with us, Mike Garrison, to do things like getting closer to the thing when you want to get kids engaged. I mean, so there are ways that you can give some real simple tips to parents that really help them be more effective and being a part of those Zoom conversations and having them kind of zoom in, as well as having them get passes to actually go into a class as an observer, not a participant, to be engaged in what's happening in the students' activity. So I think the more we can get out to parents to understand there are those options available to them, the better we can be to get the parent to continue that parent-teacher agreement to really kind of work on their students' education.
I agree with you. And to add on that is that we need to give schools the possibility to be a little bit more flexible, because we do, that's what I see in my school district. We have parents who have to go to work. And what's happening is that we have the older children in the family supervising the little ones. And so the older children in middle and high school are not able then to do their work because they are taking responsibility of their younger ones. We cannot assume that other parents can stay home and supervise the virtual learning. That's one assumption that is not okay. Secondly, we have students who highly depend on assistance in terms of accessing the learning environment and participating in the learning environment. The virtual learning environment without that assistance is not available. So we are not giving those kids a free, appropriate public education. And those children are the children who are most vulnerable, and they're falling further and further behind. This is not okay. And we do a lot of telehealth. We do a lot of those therapies virtually. And that is all good, but we know from all the studies that has been done that social emotional learning happens through personal relationships. And I see even with the testing environment, I have issues sometimes that teachers are saying, I do not know my students because they're new to me and I have seen them only online. We do not really know who they are. So everything is so difficult. At the same time, I also see teacher breaking down. Mental health issues in the schools are high-ranking. And so, we have an environment that is really where I can see it's really up tense, even though the administration is doing a great job trying to make it good and make it, I think everybody is trying so hard to make it work. But I think we need to have more flexibility in the school system where we get support for those kids who need to come into the school and have in-person learning. And then the other thing, and this is a sideline, if we're looking at the first responders and where the vaccine is going into the professional healthcare workers and nursing home. But who is mostly impacted? This is our next generation. And here's a gap right there. So I see the pain on both sides because I'm working in the school system as well. And it's I just had to go downstairs to help my own child. He could not access the test because he couldn't do it. And I have to be up here and I couldn't help him. This is not okay. And it's so painful to watch this. All right, these are my 2 cents. I'm sorry, but we have to get that corrected, because we cannot put everything onto the parents because some of the parents cannot provide that.
Thank you for that, Marguerite. And, I don't think there's any reason for you to apologize. You are sharing a real struggle and you're seeing it from both sides. You're experiencing it as a parent and also as someone who represents education. So
I have never been pulled in, to help teachers in the way that this year happening, and it's almost going above my capability. And this is a real need, because teachers do not want to be identified with having a mental health breakdown. So there's so much on the spectrum. There's so much that you have to take into account. This is not good. And I know that everybody is trying their hardest, and I'm not pointing fingers. We need to have more flexibility, and we need to operate with more grace towards parents, but also towards teachers. It's both.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just want to just number one, agree with Marguerite 100%. And then just briefly share, we had to do a 14-day quarantine because my son's pod, somebody tested positive. So everybody was out 14 days, doesn't matter what, right? Doesn't matter if you test negative, everybody's out for 14 days. And we are an anomaly. My wife's works full time. I own my own small business, couple of small businesses. And so we were all at home, and my wife and I theoretically able to work, but she works for the government and she doesn't have the flexibility that I do. And what happened is basically my business took a big hit for 2 weeks, meaning my ability to interact with my clients, because trying to provide the best possible services you can with creativity, which the private day school did and the county services were amazing, meant that it was just brutal. And we're highly educated. We've got lots of money and we've got resources, and it was so incredibly difficult for us to try and support my son. And he's done really well. He's another anomaly, right? My son has done decently well in in the kind of virtual lining, but that's only because either we pay for a full-time attendant to be with him, or one of us is there, and the technology is awful and the teachers do the best they can. And I always think, how does the single parent household working full-time do that? They can't, right? And that child goes away. And like, if it's really hard when you've got all the advantages that I do, I can't imagine what it's like when you don't. And this is the problem. There's only one fix. The fix is for those kids to be in person teaching, right? But we can't do that right now for a number of different reasons. And so I hope that Marguerite, I hope we can find creative ways to take care of all these people, but it is like we are sacrificing the future for the past right now.
And clearly in our lifetime, we've taken school for granted. I mean, it was a given that our kids go to school. I mean, that's as long as I've been alive, that's just a given. So in this crazy situation that we're involved in with, the health issue, we've got to find ways to more or less be a conduit to help those families, as Mike's talking about, because I totally agree. My heart bleeds for parents, single family parents that mom or dad has 2 jobs, 3 kids at home. I can't even fathom what they're going through. We can't, that the parent, that the first public comment, my heart went out to that parent, because I understand that we don't, there's no panacea. There's no one way of solving these issues for these children. So any information we get out to those people to find resources for them, support for them, that's where I can see us kind of at least having at least some kind of a positive impact on the constituents that we represent. So any resources that we know that we can avail ourselves of, that we can refer them to, I think that clearly would be something that would be totally valuable to all the folks that we serve.
And I might just comment on a topic not directly related to Sseac, but certainly to youngsters and to students with special needs. I think one of the things the pandemic has done, I certainly agree with Michael, it's I think highlighted the value of public education in our world to people. But the other thing it is highlighted is the lack of childcare. And I'm not sure what families have been doing in the summer months and on inclement weather days when we may be shut down for a week, or just those times that we're not in school. But it's highlighted to the school division, and I think to the greater community. There's been a huge movement in our community in the city of Waynesboro between Augusta Health, which is a large hospital, that found they didn't have childcare for their healthcare workers because they were relying on the school system. United Way has gotten involved in the community foundation, and we've really worked to open quality quality funded through nonprofits childcare as a collaborative effort. But my point being, there's a real lack of childcare in our communities that exists when we're not in school, which we're only in school 180 days a year. So all those other days, I think that's something that all of us just need to be aware of. And I can't imagine anyone in this group doesn't recognize and wouldn't support some movement toward improved childcare facilities for our families and parents, particularly those, as Mike points out, don't have the means to pay for childcare.
I just want to say thanks, because I think all of you guys are bringing up good points, and maybe instead of, maybe it could be what we've learned from the pandemic and some of the recommendations we give to the board, or things that Dr. Cassell and other people have already mentioned as far as help desk and other things to be prepared for in the future. I don't know. Just a thought.
I just want to, I certainly agree with everything everyone's saying, but I think we do need to keep in mind, and I don't want to sound like a horrible person, because I'm not. The recommendations that we're going to make aren't until June. So there's a lot of time between now and then about things that can happen. Certainly, I don't know if we want to think that they're still going to be the same as they are now. I don't think they will be. I don't want the recommendations we make to be not helpful, for the upcoming school year either, I would love to say that we could do all these things and provide the training for teachers but will that be a necessity in the upcoming year too? It's a very crazy situation, but just something to keep in mind.
And on a positive, Brian, I think that that's one of the things, and again, if there's any positives to find from this, is that we as educators, I've seen teachers and I've seen our students really, some of them really thrive in this environment, and because they've learned a lot and they've learned quickly. So any of those learnings that we can apply that would help us in the future, I think that's a positive. So I mean, the things that we're learning about how to use Zoom, like Hank and I are, I think we're the old folks here trying to kind of make this work. It's those kinds of things that really, things that I would never have experienced in my teaching when I was teaching 20 years ago, that now would certainly help a teacher be able to maybe find that child that can't come to the classroom while she or he is teaching a classroom where they have 15 kids in the class. They can have 2 kids that aren't in class. I mean, so there are some things I think that really we want to use as positives as well to kind of say, here's some things, yeah, we know these work, so let's keep learning about those things and let's augment that with that direct instruction, which we all know is critical to our student success.
Yeah, I'm with Michael on that. I do think, and I don't think this disagrees with what you're saying, Brian. I would say the chances of similar situations being imposed are high in the future, like once Pandora's box is opened, And so I think you bring up a good point in that maybe we should position our advice in our lessons less COVID specific and more virtual learning in the future.
One more thing to consider, our mandate is to, we are an advisory committee for special education. So we have to look how our special education population is really learning in this time. And I'm sure that we have some kids who learn really well virtually, but we have students who have autism, we have students with ADHD, other health impairment, who are not organized and sitting in child study meetings and triennial meetings, where those kids have the most difficulties. Kids with visual impairment, orthopedic impairment, they have so many difficulties just to access this learning environment. So we really have to look at when is virtual learning appropriate for a student and when it can, when does it really help? But we also have to keep a balance and be honest for those students who cannot learn virtually. And we have to find a solution for them, because this is not free public education, free appropriate public education. So that means we have to look as our mandate specifically for students with special needs.
While we're talking about the impacts of what the pandemic has kind of done and maybe some good things that could come out of it. When we talk about transition services for students that are getting ready to exit into the community, we are having, I'm fortunate enough to work in a school system that's going to support and work with me to come up with the right things to get students back out into the community. However, the businesses that we typically work with are having a hard time recovering from this. And so we're having a very difficult time finding placement. And so all of those evidence-based practices that we have leaned on so heavily of hands-on work experiences are now sort of at the wayside. So our county, so now we've begun to focus on what can we do in schools, even though, Marguerite, you're right, we're not in schools right now, but what can we do in schools to better teach these work skills or to provide that hands-on experiences? And so that might be something for Sseac to consider if we talk about transition services, is, equipping schools with means and toolkits and ways where they can create those hands-on experiences within their buildings. And so whether that's teaching them how to set up school-based entrepreneurships where kids can do things from the school, just creating lists of what jobs could a student do within the school. And then, I mentioned yesterday virtual job shadow and those things, but how are we, how are we engaging them to learn those good work skills?
That was a brilliant recommendation, Kendra. I don't know if you realize that, but to have that when you suggested the school-based work experiences for these kids. I think that's that's out of the box kind of thinking, and that I think that's what we're trying to do here. I'll go back to the earlier point, I believe, that was made by Joan, who first brought up the fact that we're working with parents and families who sometimes don't even know how to, let's be honest, what kind of camera do I buy to set myself up so that, how do you just those basic steps? I'm sorry, I need Jill.
Totally understand, Christine. I mean, this is such an emotional thing for so many people that the children don't have broadband access. I mean, there's so many things that we realize, and it just exacerbates the situation with the students, the special ed students. So our hearts go out to all those folks, obviously.
Yeah, I just wanted to tag off what Kendra said. We just got to find resources. We're very fortunate in my son's private day school. They've created vocational space because they can. And so he's doing vocational work as much as they can at school, but it's not the same. I think you're absolutely right, Kendra.
What I really would like to see is a survey and really have data. Who is doing well in this current environment and who is not doing well, and what are our next steps? Because we are operating on anecdotal data. I really would like to see, what can we learn from this, and where do we go from here, and really make then strong recommendation to the Board of Education.
That's a great recommendation, Marguerite. Thank you. It's difficult, and it's hard even as a parent to say, hey, I need help. Right. When you feel like everybody around you is also in that same position of, I need help. How do we support one another? How do we support our kiddos and the teachers? So I like that. I like that recommendation.
And maybe Hank can help with that, to develop a survey. We certainly could do that, and then really ask parents to give us feedback how it's going, how is this working? Because I do believe that the struggle that I have, the struggle that I see in my schools, the struggle that I see teachers have, is not isolated. And so, and I'm kind of a little bit upset that we, not upset, but I think we cannot just talk that, everything is hunky-dory when it's not. When our parents are struggling, when our children are struggling, when we feel that everybody is traumatic, has a traumatic experiences in so many ways, how do we deal with that? And I think it's our responsibility on this board to take those public comments very serious, because this is not the first time that parents are saying the same thing. We had those comments already in July, if I go back to my minutes, where parents saying virtual learning is not working for us. So we need to be sensitive to that, because that is our mandate and that's our responsibility. And data speaks louder than anything else.
So this is Suzanne from Pizza. And a thought that I had that may just be too simple or simplified is, how we talked about special ed training 101 type thing, back to basics for teachers and professionals. What about if it could be created something like a back to basics for virtual learning for parents or support people, parents, grandparents, that kind of thing, where there would be as if this whole thing was just starting now. So you're covering things like what Christine said, here's what kind of camera you need to have, or if you're going to get a laptop, you want to make sure you have, a camera on it and you know, all this kind of stuff, and just do a very basic thing. Here's an introduction to Zoom. I know that Pizzi has, we've done a fact sheet for parents and for self-advocates for our youth. Just a very basic, here's how you use Zoom. And although, you know, people may have figured it out now, there may be new things as well, or things that they didn't realize that they could do. And, you know, here's some helpful tips maybe that comes out of the survey. Here's what's working, you know, or a suggestion that somebody had that is working well for them in the virtual environment. You know, that kind of stuff, kind of like a little guide to virtual learning, or things we've learned through the however many months we're in now, you know, of virtual learning that might help other parents.
I think that is a tremendous idea. And I think if we paired it with like Claire's suggestion about the teletherapy, we could almost have like how to maintain your sanity in a virtual world. Because thinking about it from a business coach's perspective, the only way I made it through it was to have very specific routines and ways that I approached my day during the quarantine, so that I had some hope that it would be over and what would we do afterwards. And I will tell you, like, not only was my son excited when we exited quarantine, but my wife and I had a party. It was just great. And Jeff, I'm with you. I never, ever appreciate school as much as I do now, sir, ever.
I'm going to make one more comment, and be quiet because I think I've talked too much today. But I think taking a positive approach to this and highlighting the best practices that are taking place, because there are a lot of great responses going on in this state to the pandemic. And every community is different. Every school division is different. And many school divisions, there's lots of unanswered questions. There's lots of problems that, in my opinion, don't have a solution. If someone has them, I'd love for you to give me a call today, because I got about 100 emails telling me what's wrong that I can't fix. But school divisions have done a lot of great things in this. And so just like not all local Sseacs function the same, and just like some of them, in our opinions, I think could improve, many do it the right way. And so I think sharing the best practices that we've learned around school divisions is an incredible idea, and to take the positive approach to that of, here are the things that have worked in our community for our most vulnerable learners, not just necessarily special education, but many of our learners. One of the things that we did, just as a quick example, is at the end of the first 6 weeks of our being in a hybrid model, in a totally virtual before we went back to our hybrid, is identifying students who were not being successful and then bringing those into the classrooms in addition to our special education and ELL students. We just said our vulnerable students. And so lots and lots of good things have gone on. I think that's something that we've had conversations previously about best practices around a specific topic. And I guess this is a specific topic, although the pandemic is very broad.
And I think that's always a great idea, because obviously that's the best way to share the learnings. I think and again, if any kind of sheet we can have that we share some of those best practices, or if there's some repository where we can have those collected. But I still want to go back to Joan's original question or comment about the parents that can't avail themselves of these resources because they are working, as well as Marguerite. Those are the parents that have the students that are the most at risk. So if they're special ed students with parents that can't really help them, I mean, they're falling further and further and further behind. So if there's resources that are out there that we can access or avail ourselves of to let those parents know where they can find some help, I think that really would be something that would behoove us to really kind of move forward and find some way to find some support for those people.
I like that. This has been really good talking points and recommendations that are coming out of this subcommittee. I'm watching the clock right now, and I believe we've gone past a 45 minutes. So if we could take, do you need a 5-minute break or 10-minute break? You can shoot up your hands and let me know. 5 minutes? 5 minutes? Okay, great. So we're at 10:29. I'm going to say let's come back at 10:35, give ourselves an extra minute. All right, sound good? Good deal. Thank you. Okay, I'm showing us at 10:35. And so if everybody, I'll give everybody a minute or to turn on their cameras. Okay. So I'll jump right back into this. If it's at all possible for those of you that sit on student achievement and student outcome to maybe help Marguerite, help the committee out, and put your recommendations in the chat box. That might be a little simpler because there were a couple that were out there, and it might be helpful if we can see them in the chat box. And if Suzanne is if Suzanne's back, I'll call on Suzanne to provide us with some talking points from family engagement and community outreach.
Okay, I am back. Had my notes in that super safe spot and I can't find where I put them. Oh, here they are. You know, a lot of this stuff, what we're talking about, I think from the other subcommittees, it's one of those things I feel like, you know, that you're on the right track when all the subcommittees are all thinking kind of the same way. So, you know, all the things that we've just talked about this morning, you know, is the same type of thing for family engagement. If you remember yesterday, one of the things that we had said was, how are kids without parents at home being supported? Which was just reflected on. So I think continuing on that thought process and, you know, supporting the parents. I think parents have a huge guilt as well. You know, that they either don't know how to teach their kid or how to help their child, or that they can't because they have to work. And I think that's a real struggle. And I also do want to point out that this is something that our Latino outreach specialist has said is a huge issue, especially in the Latino community, because the majority of the parents that she works with are working one, if not multiple jobs. And so it's just not an option, because if you don't work, you don't get paid. And, you know, that's something that they're struggling with, that even just the guilt associated with that. Let me go back to the annual report. Another recommendation that we had made on the annual report, which actually is very appropriate right now and has also been talked about in the other subcommittees, is that that CSA funding. And our recommendation was to better align CSA funding with private day school and regional training centers. So, and now more than ever, is a huge issue with CSA funding in private schools, and the fact that private schools are really struggling right now with meeting the needs of students, because, you know, those schools are really dealing with our high incidence students, and that funding is vitally important. We also talked about already this morning in our subcommittee, what we had talked about yesterday on the family engagement was how to support teachers and how to give them, you know, additional training, but how to support them both with training, but also with the mental health issues that are just rampant right now. And like I said yesterday as well, it is a hard time being a teacher. And I used to teach, and I am very glad that I have a different job and I'm not teaching right now, because it is very difficult and very trying, and everyone is frustrated. Let's see. Well, one of the other ways I think, as far as supporting parents, might be in line with our recommendation of fully funding for parent resource centers in all divisions, and support local Sseacs by utilizing the Sseac chair to present at administrative conferences. You know, I think now Sseacs and PRCs are more important than ever, so that parents feel kind of that lifeline, and feel connected and can go to for information or even just support. But I think that the importance of local Sseacs right now is letting the school divisions know from the people who are, and what they hear of the people who are living it, are the issues. Because if you know you don't have a student in public schools right now, or in school right now, you may not realize the true impact. So I think that's even more important now, is to be able to share with the localities and the local school divisions and school boards of education what the real issues are. Christine, you want me to keep going?
You're doing great, Suzanne. And I'll just piggyback off of that. I think it was helpful for everyone. And I want to thank Danny and her GA, who had pulled together that local Sseac resource, and I believe she had a PRC listing tied to that to maybe help us at the state level reach out to the localities and support them. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Danny and her team for helping us to pull that together. But I'll let you continue, Suzanne.
Yeah, that was super helpful, Danny. And it came.
Well, Hank also helped too with the PRC. So that was.
Well, thank you, Hank. It came perfect timing.
Good.
I think when we spoke yesterday about the lack of consistency across the board as far as assignments and attendance and stuff, you know, I think this really is just a communication issue. And on the school side, I can't even imagine how many decisions and changes happen throughout every single day right now, especially, but not losing the focus of, you know, families are better engaged and are, I'm just going to say, happier if things are communicated to them ahead of time instead of just when it happens, if possible. And I know that's not always possible. However, the outcomes are, you know, most of the time, even if they don't like the decision, they at least have some time to accept it, or deal with it, or share their concerns. So, and I think if we do kind of best practices, like we were just talking about, and some tips that we've learned. I mean, I've heard people say all yesterday and today, there is some good that has come out of this whole pandemic. And some kids are really thriving. And I think we can learn from not only different school divisions and different staff in the school divisions, and not to forget all staff. It's not just you know, the administrators or whatever, although they will have some success stories as well. I think and talking to the teachers, talking to the counselors and bringing all of that information in and what has worked and highlighting some of that success, and that might help someone else. But I think that also can be this lack of consistency across the board. Again, that's the beauty of the Commonwealth and in Virginia, that we that the schools have that ability to determine what they're going to do in their locality, and it's not the same across the board. But maybe that's a suggestion, or maybe just suggestions of what questions to ask, so that sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So what are the suggestions? What are some possible questions to ask that will position you to be better prepared? And I think all that can be wrapped up into whatever kind of guide or whatever we can find or come up with. We talked about more training for professionals around special ed law, and that kind of took care of itself. My God, we're going to have the biggest little committee ever to work on that, and I think there's some great possibilities there. But that was also what we one of the recommendations to the board. Let me look. And again, I think that will also be something that will, across the board, may help with the communication and the relationships and I think the relationships are a huge issue right now. Teachers are probably feeling attacked on a daily basis, probably multiple times, which then leads us to that teacher shortage, which again is another one of our constituency report outs is the concern about teacher shortage. So I think all of that, would be beneficial. I think we have a good plan, and I'm going to do it, and Hank's going to just kill me. But he can't see my face. I can see his though. But that communication also goes with, and that knowledge base goes with that revised parent guide that we're still waiting on.
Yeah, that's you're right. You're right. I'll interject quickly because I saw a question from Tasha about getting the graduation rates or trends for our special education kids. And I know that information is available on VDOE's website. And of course, I'm going to try to fumble through here, and not sure I can quite multitask like that. But I know that it's available. Anybody know how to get there quickly? Or could drop it into the chat box?
I'll try and look for it.
Okay, thank you, Danny. And then I see we may want to check the VDOE JLARC recommendations for the teacher retention. Is that, Pat, for clarification purposes, do you think that maybe is something that could be added to policy and regulations subcommittee work?
Right.
If you're already taking a look at CSA, also include that as well.
That was my thought.
Okay, great. Okay, I like that. And I will say that these are a lot of really great recommendations, but I'm gonna ask that with these recommendations, you all consider taking on some of these responsibilities within whatever capacity you might have to look for these best practices and provide them. instead of us just saying to the Department of Education and the Board of Education, you go find this. So that could be something that our committee members do. I feel like they're already, the burden is already there on everyone. But, you know, if you are seeing some best practices, because it looked to me this morning as Dr. Hollins was going through her report and sharing that the virtual resources, that maybe there were some things in there that we haven't seen, so it more that we could add to that repository that they have now. Does that make sense? Because there's a lot of really great suggestions that are coming out of the within the chat around student achievement, student outcome, but I think I think, you know, we should take ownership and be doing some of that work and not just putting that directly on the plate of the department or the board.
And Christine, I would just interject that, you know, as people were talking, I was actually looking at some of the VDOE resources and their newsletters that they put out. You know, although we, you know, have some really valid concerns that we've been talking about this morning, and certainly there's a lot more that can be done. But VDOE, I was looking at their resources. I get the newsletters. I share those with my staff, and there's a lot of information in those newsletters that have to do with virtual resources, not to the degree that we were talking about, as far as I haven't seen anything to the degree of, you know, like I love that fact sheet idea that Suzanne mentioned, you know, because it's always short and quick, but how do you, you know, access technology and what camera do you use? Not to that degree, but there's a lot of resources available to parents. But I don't know how many parents actually access the newsletters. I'm sure VDOE would know that, but there are a lot of really good resources that I've shared with teachers through those VDOE newsletters. And I share the parent ones too, because, you know, we're in a little different situation, working with, you know, not parents so much, but other people. So we share information with them as well. But there's a lot of information out there. And I don't know how many people have actually accessed those newsletters on our committee. You can sign up for those newsletters. They're not posted on the VDOE website, but you can sign up through the links and then you get them. And there's a newsletter for it seems like every department. There's student services and family engagement. And so through all of that, there's some really good resources. I guess that's what bottom line is. Some really good resources out there already.
Let me add to what Jill's saying. You can get to that by the GovDelivery application that pops up when you enter the VDOE main page. There'll be a thing to say, hey, do you want to sign up? And you can sign up for one or all or whichever ones appeal to you. And I can't speak for every newsletter that goes out, but the one that goes out of my office, we are reaching over 16,000 parents with every delivery under GovDelivery. And just today we sent out 2 informational links to resources for parents for virtual learning. So you might want to take a look at that. That ties into what we've been talking about on trying to help parents better understand what they can do to assist and where they can get additional resources to help them in the virtual learning environment. So those are great resources. And yeah, there's one for everything from teacher licensure puts one out, equity office puts one out, every office in SESS, I believe, puts one out. So yeah, go to that GovDelivery application and subscribe to those that appeal to you.
I feel like I
would,
part of this.
I would encourage, you know, people to not only just look at them, but, you know, share them with your parents in your areas, because maybe there's a lot of parents looking at them, but, you know, if you haven't seen them, that's great. You know, you want to look at them, but share those out with people as well as representatives of Sseac.
And I feel like I started this discussion by talking about best practices. And I think my point was not to focus completely on everything that's wrong, but some of what's right with the best practices. I certainly don't want to cause work for anyone else because everybody's got more now than they can do. I think of all the organizations represented here, including DOE. I would point out part of the problem right now is the amount of information. We hear things about a lack of communication, and I hear that daily from somebody, but almost invariably when they say that, I can direct them to where the information is that they're looking for. It's out there. There's just so much right now. You can't sort through all of it. And so I don't know that producing more information is going to be helpful to us unless we're finding, we need to be really strategic in doing it. I think the point is that I know the point I was trying to make is let's look at the positive things. Michael put a comment in the chat about going to the local building. That's what you should always do, is start at the building level. Go to the school, the teacher, the principal. They're probably going to answer your questions. Most of our schools, if not all, I shouldn't speak. I can say this, in the city, every school has a dedicated person to technology. You call, they'll fix your technology problem. If you can't, have someone from central office that will come to your house and do it for you. So, it's a matter of getting that communication. Hank's right. I can't think of a question I can't find the answer to, right? Well, I've got a couple, Hank. I can't find the answer to a DOE, but the answer doesn't exist. But really, there's a lot of information that DOE's done a fabulous job during this pandemic and panic both.
Make a point for national PTA as well. National PTA puts a plethora, again, all kinds of resources for parents too. So you might refer parents to the National PTA, organization as well. They put a lot of things out. They're direct resources to parents they can use as well. So I totally agree, Jeff. There is a lot of information out there. It's a matter of just making sure people know they can funnel those things which actually are best for their children. So I totally agree.
Right, and we hear from parents all the time on that they're the information they want, they can't find because they're having to dig through so much information that's on the webpage or that's being sent out. And that was a question I was going to make, or comment I was going to make about doing another survey. Parents are getting hit with surveys. They got hit with JLARC. They've got the parent surveys from us. They got the parent surveys from their schools. They got all sorts of surveys. I'm not sure another survey is what parents are going to be into, but if that's something you don't want to pursue, then we can certainly assist in getting it out to parents. But along with what Jeff's saying, there's lots and lots and lots. And then sometimes too much information becomes troublesome when you're trying to find a specific answer and you really don't know where to click along the links. I mean, just today we were asking, how do we get to graduation rates? And we had to, go searching, and some of us are better at navigating than others. So anyway.
Is there any way to get the survey results from the school divisions, the surveys that they sent out, and see what that looks like?
Well, and I say they're getting surveys. I just know that there's lots and lots of surveys that are done at schools. I don't know if they've done one specifically related to technology or anything related to specifically to COVID, just general informational surveys and satisfaction surveys and all sorts of other things that have been hit by parents.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking personally, I know we had to fill out a survey, for our school division here, asking about our technology accessibility and stuff like that. And I didn't know I know it wasn't a requirement for school divisions to do that, but I didn't know if there was a way to kind of just say, hey, can you send us what the results were for those things just to look at it or whatever?
Brian, I'll answer that a little bit. Almost every school division had to do that in August to determine what availability of technology was, and then respond with either devices or hotspots or whatever for the virtual learning. So that information is there. Now, Hank's right. We also surveyed, are you want to return to school in a virtual or a hybrid model if it's available? And then when you get ready to do that again in October, you've got to follow up, and then you survey again, and there's been a lot. But to your question, I can't imagine why a school division wouldn't share that information with you. That's not anything that wouldn't be really public information. And I bet it has been reported at a school board meeting, and the report's there. Again, it's just a matter of all that information being out there. I'd ask for it.
And Jeff, I think too, though, but it might be complicated by the fact that probably all will be somewhat different. So I'm not sure it's actually been collected in a way that could be shared, statewide.
Absolutely, that's correct. It wouldn't be standardized in any way, but if it's just a local question, you have that. But Michael's right. There's no way you could correlate that statewide. Nothing standard.
Hank, could you remind, I know this is going to be a bad question, but can you remind me, when does the special ed survey go out? Is that at the beginning of the year or the end? I'm not sure.
We send it out usually in May, and then we give the parents, up until December to complete it for the past year, current past year. So, in fact, on the 14th of December, the 1920 school year survey ends, a collection ends, and then we will develop the survey going in for 2021. And yeah, some of the things we want to look at might be adding some questions about how did virtual go, ... So
yeah, and it might not be information we can use right now, but I was thinking, if we add a couple questions to that, but it's kind of a delay, but yeah, it might be helpful down the road. I don't know.
Well, I mean, we're going to be in this virtual environment for a while, so I think any information we can gather, even going forward, although it might be, a little later in the issue, we can still respond to it, because those issues aren't going to go away overnight.
Right.
I mean, the idea of providing hotspots isn't the solution for even many parents. I know I'm out here on the Northern Neck, and you can tell me we're going to set up a hotspot at the parking lot of the bank. Well, I got to be able to get it to the bank. And we don't have public transportation out here. We have parents without vehicles, reliant, so again, there's issues upon issues, and you can peel this thing back like an onion. You peel it back, there's another piece. So as Jeff said, there's some answers we'd like to have at the department. We just don't have them. We continually to collaborate and try to come up with something out of the box, but we got to get way outside the box, I think, to answer some of these questions. And I know the other day the issue of rural internet came up, but I think that's one thing this pandemic has done is raise the issue to even a higher level to the feds to say that, look, we've got to do something better on making sure all of our communities can access the internet, not just for the personal use, but because of this virtual instruction we're going into. I think you're going to start seeing more and more legislation, both at the state and federal level, related to the internet. And I know one of our congressmen from our district is a big proponent of increasing rural internet. And I know in conversations with him that he is going to push and push and push until every rural household at least can access internet. The next piece would be, do they have the technology? Do they have the devices to be able to use the internet? There's a difference between, hey, it's accessible to you, but if you don't have the computer or device, that doesn't do you any good either. So, I know that it's a big topic of discussion. And Christine just said, and it has to be affordable. That's the other thing. So.
Marguerite, were you going to say something?
Yeah. When we talked about the overload on information and that parents are kind of struggling with getting the information and where to find the information and how to get where they're supposed to be. I think for me as a social worker, it's, that's my lens that I'm looking through. It all comes down to relationships. And, if you have somebody that you can trust, who can provide those, information to you, or have that at the local school, that is a huge benefit. And I think, Jeffrey, you noted that as well, that coming into the local school, into the building and have the resources there would be really helpful. I I hear that from quite a bit of parents too, that there's so much information out, and some people say, yes, those information are out there, you can access them. But if you are in what I would say a lot of the parents that I see, they are in a crisis. And when you're in a crisis, you are in the fight and flight mode, or you're in the freeze mode. You are not able really to use your thinking brain in terms of where to find what. You want it right there, right then, because you are in a crisis. And so our parents are absolutely overwhelmed. Not all of them, but quite a bit of them. And I think we need to take that into account, that trauma, this whole pandemic is traumatic, and our parents have trauma responses as well, not just the students. Am I making sense?
You make sense. And it's a very important, to note. I think that's why everybody here is just trying to do what they can to support one another.
Yeah, and I see also, and that's what I have never seen that before, but I see that in school districts, not just in Warren, but the ability for all of us to communicate objectively is becoming less and less, because everybody is becoming subjectively involved in trying their best, and our barriers are being broken down right now. So that is kind of a symptoms of the pandemic. And so it becomes more personalized, and it's almost like a personal attack that we don't do enough when criticism is coming. And we cannot put it on a meta level and say, okay, this is what we're looking at. Let's step away from that. We're not putting our personal issues in here, but what can we do subjectively? And so I think that is a huge issue that I'm seeing right now. I don't know what you guys see, if this is the same issue that you see as well. But people are getting very emotional and personal, parents as well as the school community, and that is not. We should not go there. I mean, I can say that, I'm struggling with that myself, but I'm trying at least to be objective, but I have my times where I'm not too.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Marguerite. And again, I agree. So perhaps I'll try to circle back around, and maybe we can make the recommendations from family engagement and community outreach in the chat box as well, on ways in which we can move forward, recommendations for the annual report, because again, it's the same thing. What are the immediate steps we can take now to support folks in their work, our work? And then what are those things that we can make recommendations for the annual report? And I'll, we've got some time to put some of those ideas into the chat box. I also wanted to bring us back around to, we have these, we're trying to wrap up the subcommittee work, and these discussions that sometimes might be a little more challenging to do as a larger group, which is what makes it nice when we're in person and there's I guess better the ability to dialogue and come back as a full committee. And so I appreciate what you all are doing. We would have to be prepared to go back or come back in March with these recommendations and commendations to add to the annual report. So if we're looking at some of the recommendations that we had made in this previous report, it was around the teacher retention, recruitment, the social emotional learning. Those are all active, they're ongoing now. And then we had 2 additional recommendations, and one I thought was to see if we can't partner with the higher ed folks it was support efforts of higher education by encouraging partnerships and expanding programs that make permanent the focus on universal design that has been required in COVID-19 pandemic. So we had that recommendation on there to the Board of Education. And it sounds like that one's going to stay. Hank?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. No, you're fine. You were unmuted, so I wasn't sure if you were.
Oh, no, I'm unmuted because what I wanted to make a comment is if y'all aren't meeting again till March, and the executive committee is usually set up the Wednesday before the meeting on Thursday. But wouldn't it be better to maybe move the executive committee to Friday and move the meeting to Wednesday, Thursday to give you time to meet and talk and come up with some recommendations collectively as a group, rather than trying to bring it into the executive committee on Wednesday and then they come into the meeting and presenting it on Thursday, Friday?
I mean, I don't have any objection. I think that's going to be up to the executive committee members.
Well, that's why I was just throwing out there. If you wanted more time to discuss it up front, because normally what you all do is the executive committee formulates a draft report and presents it to the committee for review, but you've had discussion on everything you put in the draft report up until that point, where in this case, if you try to put in all these recommendations you're talking about now and haven't really had a deep discussion as a committee on it, you might be, having double work to do, I guess, is what I'm trying to suggest. That was just a thought that went into my head when I was thinking, okay, you guys got to formulate the response and then prepare it.
Right. No, I wouldn't disagree. It's going to be Marguerite, Jill, Brian, Matt, and actually Mr. Garrison now is a member of the executive committee. He was took on the role of member at large. So do you have any objections to meeting afterwards, after the full committee comes together, reversing the order of things?
No, I don't have any problem with it.
I do not either. I actually think it's a pretty good idea.
So to make it clear, we're talking about the March meeting. We're meeting on Thursday and Friday, and the executive committee is meeting after our group Friday afternoon. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. The executive committee would meet after we've been able to come back in March as a full committee.
What I proposed was moving the full committee meetings to Wednesday and Thursday, and then the executive committee to be on Friday. But that's up to y'all. I don't care how you want to do it. I'll just schedule it however. And the other piece might be keep it Wednesday, Thursday, and then convene the executive committee in April. That's another option. Nothing that says the executive committee has to meet when we've got it scheduling to meet. So
honestly, I like the idea of meeting Wednesday, Thursday as a large group, and then on Friday as the executive committee, because when you are on Zoom for a whole day, you are zoomed out, and then you're not as productive as you would be the next day. And I would like to have it right after the large group, because then everything is fresh on your mind. What do you guys think?
I think that's great. And I'm getting that's good from Mr. Garrison. That would work with his schedule. So everybody would need to make that adjustment to their planning calendar, that the full committee would meet Wednesday, Thursday versus Thursday, Friday. And the executive committee would be pulled together to meet that Friday. Sound like a plan? Thumbs up? head nods. Yes, yes, yes.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
great, great. Oh, awesome. All those thumbs up. Actually, I'm going to answer Danny's question. We cannot use breakout rooms because there's no way to simultaneously be broadcasting the meeting if we put ourselves into breakout rooms. That was a suggestion. We tried to do that maybe at the second meeting, and then realized that the challenge that would present. Okay, so we're at about 11:15. I know we've talked a lot. If you can keep your recommendations coming for family engagement, policy and regs, and student achievement, student outcomes, that would be very helpful because we do have to take up the business of nominations. And I know it's something that I had mentioned in the previous meeting. I talked about it again yesterday morning to say that we'd be coming back to the table this morning with that slate of officers. And I know that several folks have been nominated, and you know, they're still accepting the nomination or declining the nomination. But I am going to turn the floor over to Mr. Justin Gatling. He is the chair of your nominating committee, and he can share his report.
Good morning, everybody. The nominations for the chair are Mr. Brian, Mr. Mike Garrison, and Mr. Michael Willian, I believe. For the position for vice chair, nominees are Mike Garrison, Marguerite Jeffer, and Kendra Belcher, and Michael Willian. For the position of secretary nominee, the only one is Marguerite. For the position of 3 members at large, the nominees are Dr. Castle, Ms. Kendra Belcher, Mike Garrison, Dr. Danny, Ms. Meredith, and Sandy, and Mr. Michael Willian. And that's all the reports for the nominees of this year.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that, Justin.
Thank you.
Justin, can you send me your report?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Thank you. I couldn't
You're
get
welcome.
And so if you take a look at the bylaws, you'll see that the slate has to be presented during this meeting and at least 30 days in advance of the final meeting. And that final meeting will take place in March. So, you know, there's an opportunity for some of you to be thinking about accepting the nomination. Clearly, there are several folks being nominated for each position. There are 3 at-large member positions that will be open: the chair, the vice chair, and with Marguerite being the only nominee for secretary, she would get that by default unless somebody else would like to take on that responsibility.
Or she can decline.
Oh yes, or she could decline. She could. And then somebody would have to nominate another individual on the committee for secretary.
Well,
Go ahead.
How's it working? I thought I already have been on the committee for 4 years.
So your 4 years of serving on the executive committee expires December. So you were appointed as the secretary at the December 2017 meeting. So you could continue on the executive committee as secretary or in any other position until December of 2021. And as I went back and I was looking at Brian, you were appointed to the at-large position in July of 2017, and you can continue serving as the at-large member through July of 2021. That would be the two-year terms back to back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So are there any additional questions around the nominations, or is there anything you need to know more about each of those positions? We're good? Okay. So congratulations to all of those who have been nominated or are still thinking about nominating yourself or someone else. And there'll be a slate, well, there'll be a ballot that will appear at the March meeting for those that accept their nominations. We'll be casting ballots at that time. Okay, so moving right along, you know, we're at 11:21. We've covered a lot. Unless there is any further discussion from the committee members on, you know, next steps. Is there anything? Anyone? I'm looking.
Do we need to talk about presentations?
So in March, what we have right now scheduled is a presentation from the TIES organization. And quite honestly, I don't know if Hank can help answer this question or not, but we don't yet know if we will continue to be meeting virtually or in person. Hank, do you have any thoughts on that? Because that may also change the length of the day if we go back to in-person, an in-person meeting.
Well, the only insight I've got is when the board published its listing for its upcoming board meetings, it indicated that they would continue to be meeting virtually. So I have not directly asked the question on whether, given the size of our committee, can we meet in person? But I would suspect that if the board is not meeting in person, that they would certainly not support us doing so. But I have not asked the question directly to get a yes or no answer.
So knowing that we would have TIES presenting, and I believe there was discussion about a CSA presentation, is that?
Yeah, if that's something that you're talking about that Matt suggested.
Right.
Then if Matt can get me the contact information, or if Matt wants to reach out
sure,
to that person and check first, and then let me know how to reach them so I can give them the details once we start nailing down the agenda.
Hey, Hank, Daniel Begin from TTAC ODU. I can easily reach him. Is that the virtual stuff that I was telling you guys about? Am I on the same page as you guys?
That's what I'm referring to. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what
Yeah.
Christina was talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say, she said CSA. I don't have a speaker for that.
Oh, okay. No, I think I was referring, I thought Brian had mentioned that. Maybe I'm not thinking correctly.
No, you're thinking fine. I just want to make sure I'm hearing you.
Yeah, yours was pre-ETS, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, what it was essentially a presentation. And I think you guys had already talked about this, some of the most vulnerable learners and the students with the more significant disabilities, how to engage them virtually. And I thought it was a great presentation. And in fact, he did it for over 50 people from our agency, and everybody raved about it. So I just think it's a really worthwhile presentation.
All right. Well, again, if the committee is fine with that, I just need some contact information.
Sure, I can get that to you.
And then let's go back to the CSA question then. What presentation or whom are you looking to present? What's the topic? or were we?
I think I misunderstood, and I might be thinking about the JLARC study. Do you think JLARC would come back to the state Sseac and share their report? Although we're, going to be tuning into that presentation on the 14th, but do you think it's out of the question to invite them back?
I'll let the committee members respond to that question.
I really would like for them to come back and present their findings. I think it's much more interesting in person, since they came to us a year ago in March and asked for our assistance. I really think that would be a great opportunity.
Well, and by that time, they'll be able to brief you on the SPED report also.
Yeah, that's really crucial.
I think that's the one that's more important to our work, is that special education report. So that would be great.
And the purpose of asking them to come back would be to have them discuss or to answer questions to you about the report, from you about the report, or because it would be redundant for them to come do the briefing that they're going to do on the 14th. Not that every one of you are going to be able to make it on the 14th. I get that too, but.
Good question. Bear with me a second. Oh, well, it does look like you can, I'm looking at their website right now, and it looks like the opportunity would be there to watch an archived video. So if we miss that presentation on the 14th, the opportunity is there to go back and view that presentation.
But if you wanted them to come back and actually address questions that you have based on the report, I think we can make that arrangement.
Okay. Would that be helpful to the group? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Yes. I see one thumb, two thumbs. Oh, there we go. Thumbs up. Awesome. Awesome.
Lord.
I'm so sorry, Hank.
It's all right.
And then we would also, well, let's see, at that time, we're also going to need to be reviewing the state operated programs annual plans. So that has to be on the agenda. I'm thinking of the duties that we have to make sure that we're have to perform.
Christine, didn't we say that we were going to ask Pat Hames to come back to present her report? I mean, Hank did a great job yesterday, but he said it wasn't actually her report.
When I said it wasn't her report, it wasn't like she had one done to give me to present, is what I was kind of getting to. I don't know if she has one or not. I mean, she probably has a report, but I don't know what additional information she would be providing, but we can certainly ask her to come and do a report from her perspective on what I went over yesterday.
Well, I was going to say, I felt like the report that you did was the review of, was in fact that report that we would receive.
Right, let me clarify. That report I did was what I would suspect to be an annual report on dispute resolution options with the emphasis on due process as required by the regs.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I presented to you yesterday. My comment was bringing Pat back if you had further clarification, or if she feels that there might be something else she wants to share with you that I may not have covered.
Okay.
But I think I covered it all. But that's y'all's decision. If you want me to ask her to come back, I can ask her to come back.
Can I just make a comment? I don't want to get too many presentations. We do have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Brian.
And we typically reserve one day to work on the recommendations. So I would propose we reduce the number of presentations, and we're going to have that extra time in July now to be able to have those presentations. So can we do something like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So TIES, you know, they're the National Technical Assistance Center. Do we still want to have them come and share their presentation in March? It is on virtual strategies. Okay. It may not, let's maybe eliminate JLARC from March.
No.
No. Well, but remember too though, Marguerite, that that video is and their presentation is going to be available on their website for us to take a look at. And certainly they could be invited back for July. I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibilities, but you know, Brian does make a really good point. I was going to get back to that, which is why I had said that we also need to review the state operated programs annual plans. So that has to be built into March. So March is already, it's becoming heavy with presentations, and we're making this transition of the annual report. We need time for that.
Keep in mind the SOP annual report normally doesn't take very long.
Right.
Hasn't in the past anyway.
So where do we want our focus? Suggestions?
Will you just read off the ones that we have right now?
It's the TIE Center, the PREETs, JLARC, the state operated program annual plans, and then the work around the annual report itself.
Right.
And then plus we're going to have Dr. Hollins too as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. Well, personally, I think the PREETs may be able to hold off.
Yeah.
And then we got Dr. Hollins, TIES, JLARC, annual plan. Well, I mean, I guess presentation-wise, SAM, TIES, and JLARC. That's 3 presentations. That's as many presentations as we had this time. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right.
That seems workable.
Yeah.
That seems workable. I think 3 seems reasonable.
And I think that gave you all plenty of time to engage in a lot of meaningful discussion, and it'll provide the same opportunity in March.
Yeah, we still got an hour left here.
Yeah. And I think.
Can I just clarify that I just get whacked?
Yeah.
You did not, Mr. Luther. You were not whacked. You were not.
I think I just got powered out by Mr. Brian there.
An hour left, they said.
Hey, you know, the summertime.
That's what private day does.
Summertime is a better time for that presentation. That's all.
It's okay.
Maybe it'll be in person. We'll all be happy and everything.
Hey guys, it's okay.
Like the optimism.
And the same with the JLARC. We're going to move that till July.
I actually think, and I'm sorry to bring this up again, the JLARC report would be really good for the annual report, because it will bring up issues in terms of special education and what they found during the pandemic. And I really think we should add that to our annual report because it's timely. The same with the technical assistance and center about virtual learning. Those things are really, really important right now. I don't know what other people think, but these are my 2 cents.
And I can see it being as important as, you know, if we really do a good job studying the results of their plan and their recommendations and really have some good questions to ask them, that we might want to include some of that information on our annual report, then yes, I say that's a worthy reason to have them. But that's my thoughts.
And I understand maybe wanted to ask some direct questions, but if you've never seen a JLARC report, it starts off with their recommendations, and then there's a big documentation created that explains their findings / rationale for making the recommendations. So you do get that if you look at the whole report. What they'll do on December 14th is go over the recommendations and make a general overview of the study. They won't get into the full discussion of the report. The report is 149 pages, I think.
Any of those things we could get beforehand to review and look at, that would certainly help us, be prepared for that.
Right.
Make condense it or make it shorter. So any of those things would help us give us more time in the.
Right, and that JLARC report is available on that website that Sam shared with you earlier. Just click on it, it'll bring it up, and you can print the report. You can print a summary, or you can print just the recommendations. It's, like I said, it's a 141 page report on CSA, and the one for special ed is even larger.
I don't know if they've released this.
They have not released the special ed report.
The DOE one.
We have access to what they call an exposure draft. That's it.
Oh, okay.
But
hey,
you want to share anything?
I cannot.
Okay.
Just you want me to have to retire early? Is that what
No, never.
Hey, can I just ask a clarifying question for us outgoing people? We still will be there in July, correct?
What's that?
We're still going to be part of the board through July, and then that's it, correct, for us outgoing people?
No, sir.
June?
It's June 30.
Yeah, so Brian, you're knocking me out. You guys will have to hear the presenter without me.
You already know all about this stuff, Matt. You don't need to hear it again.
Don't worry, Matt. I'll make sure they get it in. I'm your
That will
transition guy.
be in memory of me. Thanks.
You could watch it on YouTube.
Okay, I will. I'll watch it.
Y'all are driving me crazy this morning. All right. I see Mike Garrison shared you a link with the JLARC report. So thank you, Mike.
Okay. I'm looking at one more recommendation. Are there resources for PRCs to have a course that they could run on a regular basis monthly for parents that are new to the special education process? Just thinking about increasing education of special ed process and being proactive in helping families and schools avoid the dispute resolution options that Hank discussed yesterday. Could be simple by breaking up the critical decision points training into parts and creating a curriculum. That's a great suggestion, Kendra. So thank you.
It's really appropriate for today's meeting, but the conversation kept getting swept away in pandemic. And so I just wanted to make sure that I got it out there before we left today.
No, that's great. That's a really great recommendation. And I know, we had some earlier discussions about trying to make sure that every locality has a a parent resource center, or access to a parent resource center, because it's not, there's not one in every school division.
Right.
And it could be just a resource for districts as well. I've been trying to sell it in mine, but I keep getting a stay in your lane. So hopefully someday it'll take off. But I feel like you could set it and forget it. You could have a weekly curriculum where week 1, you're talking about referral and eligibility process. Week 2, you're talking about IEP development. Week 3, and so that every week, and so parents don't have to take it in order. They can just take it in the place where they are in the process. And then I also feel that there should be there should be a way for schools to reach out to, if a new referral comes in, then those parents get a little postcard saying, join us for some of these classes. And I think if school systems and parents are learning the process together, and it's VDOE information, so we know it's right, that there might be more collaboration, and that would be a way to be proactive against having, the dispute resolution things that we have to have.
I'll take that under advisement, Kendra, and I'm talking to my staff. And Pete's already doing a 101, parents new to SPED. So maybe we can work collaboratively with them through some additional grant funding, Suzanne.
Yeah,
to,
and I'll be honest.
to create something, you know, kind of like Transition University, where it's ongoing and available, and they can plug in and do whatever. So we'll engage in that conversation.
Yes, I'll be honest, that's where some of this idea came from, is the way that Transition University was formatted, which I can't tell you guys enough was just genius. And so we've really enjoyed that. And so something along these lines where it teaches parents the processes, there might be less odd interpretations of the law, and then we may have less contentious IEP meetings.
Good point. Suzanne, got a couple of things to reach out and talk to you about subsequent to this 2-day meeting. So
Okay.
we'll just add that to the list.
Okay, so we're at 11:40.
Let me back up and make sure I got it right on the agenda.
Go ahead.
Ties, SOP annual plans, Sam's update, and then the other general things that have to be in there, like public comment. What did we decide and where did we land on JLARC? Apparently we didn't. Okay, that's why I'm asking my question.
We will start talking that we will prepare for questions and then we will have a meeting.
And really, quite honestly, I think it's going to come back to, is JLARC going to be available to present to us? I think we're not taking that into consideration. We know that TIES has it on their calendar to do their presentation, but we can't say with certainty that JLARC will be available to join us. So,
I think you're right, Christine, that JLARC's availability may be a little limited, you know, with everything else they got going on.
Right. So let's not make the March meeting too heavy with presentations, because we all know, those of us that have been sitting on this committee for quite some time, how much time we spend drafting that annual report. And with all of the activity that's happening, you know, with the CSA report study from JLARC, and there'll be a special education and whatever activity happens within the General Assembly, you know, we may have our discussions may be longer.
And just as an FYI, because of the type of meeting we're going to have in March, I'm going to resurface the issue of breakout rooms. And if it's an issue of availability of having to break out and live stream 3 other meetings, then we'll see how that can be done, if that's feasible at all. I was just told initially that, you know, you can't do a breakout and run a YouTube session, but that to me doesn't mean you can't run 3 consecutive sessions. And if it's like when we go into subcommittee work live, the participants, the public is able to move about as they feel comfortable, but I'm not sure how that works in a Zoom, how they would have access. So I am going to ask and dive a little deeper just to see if there would be that possibility of doing some breakout to give you a chance to talk as a committee and then come back to the full committee. I think that might be beneficial.
That would be awesome if you could make that happen.
I'm not a magician, but I'm going to ask the questions of those that might have more technology knowledge than I have. Yeah, okay.
Awesome. Well, and I see that Matt wants, he would like a steak dinner.
I want my final steak dinner before I'm gone, Hank. In-person meeting.
Where you live, Matt?
I live in New Kent.
Oh, I'll come by your house the next time I come down to Saudi Creek Winery. How's that?
All right, you got to come to the New Kent Winery. I'm closer, and I'll take care of
All
it.
right.
All
Okay.
right, man.
We'll take care of that.
All right.
All right. Let's get back on task.
Fantastic. Okay. So, you know, it sounds like we've got some next steps to move forward. And I'm going to yield once again to see if there are any further discussions or comments from the full committee. Hank, are we wrapping this up nicely in a bow for you?
Yes.
Okay. So it looks like we are good to go. And so if there is no further discussion, I am going to call this meeting adjourned at 11:45, ahead of schedule. I wish you all a very happy, healthy holiday season and look forward to seeing you all return in the new year, and hope it's brighter and better than ever before. So thank you all for being here today, and you all be safe.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Everybody.
Happy holidays.
All right. Bye.
Happy holidays.